Welcome, welcome, welcome to Astrology Live. I'm your host, Alex Harper, and it is my absolute honor and pleasure to be joined by a great panel of astrologers. We are going to be discussing the election and then reading your charts after that. Now, first, I'd like to introduce Gary Caton. He is a legend in the astrology community, has been doing this for I don't even know how many years, maybe a whole Saturn cycle. He's got
Yes.
a book called the Hermetica Triptycha, which is absolutely excellent. I've read it, and it's got original research that really does work. So, absolute honor to have Gary on the show. And
Thank
we
you.
also, you are very welcome, sir. Also, we have S.J. Anderson, who I am also a huge fan of. I've followed S.J. for years and years. He's taught me a lot, and it's a great honor to have him on the show. One of my favorite astrologers. And then, so welcome,
Thank you,
S.J.
Alex.
It's
Thank you.
great.
Glad to
Welcome.
be here. Pleasure to be with you.
And then we also have uh, at GBT and Gal, you may not know him, but he is a rising star in the astrology community, particularly with his stuff around sports astrology. Really like the work he is doing, and I'm excited to have him on the show as well. Um, Great guy, and hope you guys. Yeah, it's great to have you, dude.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Welcome.
Thank you,
All
Alex.
right. So,
This is
how this is going to work, guys, is this is the election special show. So, we are going to first, each of us is going to take about 10, 15 minutes to talk about what we think is going to happen in the election. And then after that, we will do live chart readings where you guys can phone in and join the chat, and we'll pull your chart up live on the air. So, without any further ado, I would love to start with Gary. You want to start actually?
All right. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. Let me get your thing pulled up. All right. I'm gonna hide everyone. I'm just gonna do. I'm gonna do like this. No, that's not. Fuck. Here we go. This is the way. All right. So. All right.
I just wanted to let people know you can find me at dreamastrologer.com. That's my homepage, and there's links to all my socials and all that. So if you like what you see and hear, catch up with me there, and that'll have all my other links and stuff. So that's the purpose of that first slide.
Yep. All
And
right. So.
yeah. Yeah. So there's a lot of different approaches to looking at mundane astrology. Mundane meaning mundos, world astrology, right? And typically in modern approach is to look at the nation chart of a nation state. Well, the thing is about that is a nation state is a relatively recent development in world history. And so that approach is not the same approach that would have been used, for instance, in like the Islamic Golden Age. Cats like Abu Masar, what they were doing is they were saying, hey, if you want to know what's going to happen in the world, watch when the sun crosses the zero Aries point, draw a chart for that moment, and it'll tell you about what's going to happen for the next year. And so the way that works is that if there's a fixed sign, and you set it for the capital city of whatever region that you're forecasting for, right? So it's a pretty straightforward method. If there's a fixed sign rising, the chart's good for the whole year. If there's a mutable sign rising, or what's called a double-bodied sign, right, then you would use the second chart at the Libra ingress. And then if there's a cardinal, or what was called a movable sign rising, because those are quick energy, you would actually cast all four ingress charts. So for one of the elections that we're looking at, I'll actually have two charts. And then classically, the leader, the king, or in this case, president, would be signified by the 10th house. The president and their party would be signified by the 10th house. And then The fourth house, because it's opposite the 10th, would signify the opposition. Okay, so that's what we're doing. And then I went back to 2016 to look at that. And I might actually need my glasses here. So notice that in 2016 at the Aries ingress, there is a mutable sign rising, right? So what that means is if we want to look at the election, which happens in the second half of the year, we need the Libra ingress chart. And so we're going to go through to that one. All right, now in the Libra ingress chart, what we're looking at is to see the condition of the 10th house ruler. There's no planets in the 10th, but it's ruled by, it's Leo, and it's ruled by the sun, which is in the 12th. So the sun in the 12th house tells us something about the party in power. At that point, it was the Democrats. It was Obama was finishing 2 terms, and so that would signify that Hillary, right, the incumbent for the Democratic Party. Sun in Libra in the 12th house, not a very great indicator. The opposition party would be indicated by the 4th house, which is Aquarius. There's no planets there. So we look to the ruler. Saturn's, Saturn's in the 2nd house. So Saturn is succedent versus the other indicator being cadent. I mean, it's not great. Saturn's not in a great position, but he's in a better position than the sun. So that would forecast a Trump win. And the thing is, I remember Esar had a panel and all 4 people picked Hillary. Nobody thought Trump could win, but this technique, at least this brief way of looking at it, it should have been considered a possibility at least. Now, if we go through to the 2020 election, what we see is that we have a fixed sign rising. So this chart is good all year. So we can begin to look at, once again, the 10th house ruler with a Scorpio rising is going to be Leo. That's the midheaven, where I'm looking specifically at the 10th, Leo. So the sun, again, is in the 6th house of health. Now, by a lot of accounts, economically and so forth, Trump had a successful 4 years, but the pandemic was just a mess in general. And the thing of it is if you're the leader, you've got a mess on your hands. It's your responsibility. So with the sun being in a cadent house there, that signifies weakness. Cadent houses are seen to be weak, the weakest of the 3. If you look at the 4th house, it's ruled by Saturn, Aquarius. The moon is there. And Saturn is in Capricorn. Saturn's in the 3rd house, which is also a cadent house, but the 3rd house makes an aspect, a Ptolemaic aspect to the 1st. So the 3rd house is considered more fortunate than the 6th house, which does not make. So this actually predicts a Trump loss. The incumbent loses here, and which is what happened. And then if we come to this is 24, yeah. So what's interesting, what's interesting about 24 is, again we have Scorpio rising, and again the sun is in the 6th house. But this time, it's rather than the president dealing with a national health crisis, the president is the health crisis. I mean, he dropped out basically because of his debate performance, which was not good at all. And so that's pretty reflective of reality. So it's not looking good for the president and his party. The ruler of the 4th, again, is Saturn. Saturn is conjunct a benefic planet, Venus. It's also in a succedent house, which is definitely, and it's in a sextile aspect with its ruler. Jupiter classically rules Pisces. There's a sextile to Jupiter there. So overall, Saturn looks pretty good there. And so it looks like an incumbent situation is much more positive than the challenging position is much more positive than the incumbent in this technique. And just to make things interesting, so there's another way of looking at it, which is more modern. The modern method, and this is just one of many modern methods, but this is useful for sports as well. So you cast a moment for if you were doing the Super Bowl, it would be for kickoff, right? In this case, the first vote is cast at midnight in Dixville Notch, New Hampshire. A lot of people don't know that. I happen to have a real Virgo geek, mentor early in my career who taught me this. And in this case, the first house represents the home team. In this case, the home team would be the incumbent, and the seventh house would signify the away team or the challenger. Okay, and in the case of counting and whether or not that's going to be an issue, we would look to Mercury. So if we look at these charts, we don't need to look at more than one because there's only one moment. So again, I went back to 2016. And what's interesting here is that the first house is ruled by Mercury. Can you bring that up just a little bit? I'm not seeing the cameras. There we go. So Mercury is in the third house here. So it's cadent, but it's in one of the more fortunate of the cadent houses. And then the seventh house is ruled by Jupiter or Neptune, depending on how you do it. If you do Neptune, Neptune's in the seventh, so that's pretty fortunate. If you do Jupiter, Jupiter's in the second, so Jupiter is succedent. So that, again, looks like a more positive situation for the challenger in 2016, and that is who won. If we go to the next one, this is 2020. What's interesting, I'll wait for that for the next slide. So here we have the first house is Leo. Because of the way the U.S. elections fall in a range of a week, and the ascendant being right there at the cusp of Virgo, this one has gone back into Leo. So what's interesting here is that the sun is in the fourth house. The sun is angular here. So that's a pretty strong situation for the incumbent. The Saturn is the ruler of the seventh, is in the sixth. Now it's in its own sign of Capricorn, but it's in a cadent house. And notice that in this program, red by the numbers for a planet means that it's retrograde. Notice that Mercury in the third is retrograde, right? So this was a Mercury retrograde election. So there was all kinds of counting issues. We had mail-in ballots, like unprecedented amounts, and you can make a value judgment on whether or not the counting was an actual issue or not. Some people feel that it is. Some people feel that saying that is a bad thing. But Mercury's retrograde. And the fact that it was going to be an issue is right there. And it's interesting that this method would seem to indicate that the incumbent was in a better position, but that's not what the outcome showed. So that's an interesting case. If we move forward to this year, once again, now what's interesting about this, whose chart does those angles look like? Late Leo rising and late Taurus culminating.
It's Trump.
Yeah, Trump.
That's Trump's angles, which is kind of weird. It's kind of a weird synchronicity. Once again, and I mean, we could go into that, like that's a whole nother topic. But once again, the ruler of the first is in the fourth, so it's angular. So that favors the incumbent. to a degree, and the ruler of the sixth, or sorry, the ruler of the seventh in this case is Saturn, which is in the eighth. Now, if we're just looking at houses, angular trumps succedent, pun intended. But um, notice that the sun is opposed by Uranus. So the significator of the incumbent is opposed by Uranus, whereas the significator of the challenger is not afflicted. And so this is a little more difficult to call, but I'm thinking with that sun being afflicted, even though it's angular, yeah, I'm going to say that this one looks better for the challenger, actually, just because the challenger is unafflicted. So now, one thing that I think is important to do is like just to check our astrological calculations. And so far, both methods, the modern method and the classical method, would have me saying it looks like Trump should be the winner. But let's think about this for a second. What does the actual boots on the ground tell us? You know, state of the nation, debates, recent polls, recent events and polls, etc. I mean, when you begin to look at the polls, for instance, they'll tell you that the race is really close. But the thing of it is, if you look at the past performance, particularly for Trump, Trump almost always outperforms polling. Yeah, we're going to the next slide.
Yeah. Okay.
So, I mean, first of all, you got this guy got sent to jail and got his mug shot. And listen, for some segments of the population, that's serious street cred, right? They're like, yeah, he's one of us now. You know what I'm saying? And then he survived an assassination attempt. I mean, again, that's a kind of sympathy that's going to go in his way. The polls are definitely trending in Trump's direction. I mean, the lead for Harris is down to like 0.2%, I think, and Trump's leading all the battleground states. So we're going to the next slide now. So polling, I mean, and given the fact that, you know, look at that. And that's going to be a famous picture for a really long time. And when I saw that, I was in Europe and I was like, how could this guy possibly lose? That was my first instinct. But yeah, if we just look at the polling, what's really interesting, I mean, Trump's approval rating in 2016 was 33%, and he won. He's at 46 now. I mean, that's a dramatic improvement. So, and then there's one more slide, I think. This one is really telling. If you look compared to, I mean, Trump was behind by like 7 points at this point in 2020. And he was behind by more than that in 2016. So if he was behind and in either one or came really close, and then this time he's dead even, that seems to be a huge advantage for him. So boots on the ground information that I can see backs up what the charts are telling me, that it should be a Trump victory. And honestly, I didn't even address this, but Mercury is not retrograde in the election chart, and I don't really see any issues, accounting issues. I don't think it'll be a problem. I think now, obviously, they've already said there's going to be counting going on after the election, so that will happen regardless. But I think it's going to be a case where Trump is projected the winner on election night. Actually, that's my conclusion.
Right. Great. Well, thank you, Gary. Does anyone else on our panel have any questions for Gary about his presentation? I mean, I liked the how you use the modern and the classic method. it is interesting that they do seem to give slightly different, like the modern method seems to be less
Clear.
less clear, right? And
Yeah.
it's not as decisive. I thought that was
Right.
interesting.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. So, in that
Given
case,
that the
maybe.
election is during Scorpio season, won't the ruler always be angular? Is that a fact?
Well,
The 2020 and the 24 chart had both similar ascendants. And how do you account for early voting? So right now, about 9.8 million people have already voted early so far.
right, but we can't know the time when that first
Right.
votes were cast, so
Okay.
it's
All
not
right.
knowable. So,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, it's not perfect, but we know for sure that New Hampshire has a tradition of people voting at midnight, and
Yes.
so, but yeah, no, actually, because yes, I mean, it would be more interesting and it would be more valuable as a technique, maybe, if it were a little more, but because it's right on the edge of Leo and Virgo, the sun will not always be angular, And what's interesting about that is like the incumbent usually has a big edge, right? So the fact that was angular 2 out of 3 is kind of indicative of the reality that the incumbent has a significant advantage. But notably in that one in 2016 when Trump won, there was a Virgo rising, and so the sun was not angular, and yeah, there was a challenger that nobody thought could win, but he did.
Right.
Now, I think it's important to kind of acknowledge that like because what we're doing here on this program is attempting to put our biases to the side, or at least acknowledge the biases that we have, and look at the astrology and see what it tells us. But obviously, any kind of judgment that you make, like even if something's good or bad, is going to depend on your assumptions. So we should always acknowledge that, right? And always acknowledge that we're not uh we can't be completely indifferent and completely detached from this. But I think we're all attempting to look at the astrology and see what we believe it's telling us, rather than trying to project our desires onto the chart. I mean, that should always be the goal, right? So is there any last thoughts that you wanted to share, Gary, before we move on to SJ?
Yeah, let's see. I mean, it's interesting to me that we have a situation where the economy is not that great, and but the other thing that is a factor in this election is that a vast majority of people seem to think, by polling, that the country is not headed in the right direction. And like I said, usually when right or wrong, and whether it's really their fault or not, the leaders are held responsible for the state of the union at the time. And so, yeah, it's basically like you whether you rightly or wrongly, you blame things on them. Like that tends to be what happens. And so, like Trump was on the other end of it last time, and then now as the challenger, he's on the opposite end of it. So it's just interesting to me how, like, if you think about fate, like, it's kind of a weird twist of fate. And that's just an interesting observation. It really doesn't have anything to do with the astrology necessarily, but it's interesting twist of fate, like how you end up on what side of things when the proverbial ish hits the fan.
Now, certain swing states have adopted the 2020 method of counting ballots. So if certain swing states are not going to give us the results on election night, or perhaps the day after, or maybe because 2020, it took 4 days for CNN to be the first organization to project Biden as the winner. It would happen 4 days later. Yes,
Right.
Mercury is not retrograde this time, but Mars is going to go retrograde. And however,
Is Mars retrograde at the time of the election?
no, it's in shadow. but it goes
Okay.
retrograde. I would say
5 December, and it's enters Leo the day before the election, so it's there in that Leo. Those first 5 degrees were the only degrees that it will spend in Leo before it stations retrograde. So it's probably going to be thick. That retrograde energy is my imagination, my guess.
Yeah.
But is it
It'll
going to
be
go retrograde?
interesting.
No,
I mean,
not till
that'll be a
December.
learning experience for us, right? To see, like, this is actually where it's hard for me. Like, whoever wins, like, I'm willing to accept the outcome, but like, I mean, look, we've had we sent we have the technology to like send rockets into space. We have satellites. Why can't we count votes in one day? I mean, it just seems kind of ridiculous not to be able to do that.
Yeah, certain states like Florida are counting that. They already are, timely, but certain states like Pennsylvania are going to they've already said it's going to take us, because the legislature is divided in certain states. So one party basically says, oh, we can't change, and the other party's like, why are we doing this? The entire nation is watching.
Yeah. But here's the thing: if one candidate has more than 270 without those states that are still counting, it doesn't matter.
Right, I agree, but I believe we are not going to be in that situation given the swing states that are needed to get to 270.
Oh yes. We're going to talk about those swing states. I think later on.
Sounds good.
But we can't. I do want to keep this moving because we are on a time limit here. Just for everyone involved. So
no, it's a good question, and it'll be a good learning experience to see what happens.
Absolutely, no. I mean, we're all this is one of those elections where it's really. It's every polls basically have them statistically tied. If you look at them, it's a nail biter is the headline. It's a nail biter. Nobody knows. There's a lot of new people coming in. There's a lot of Gen Z folks who have never talked to a pollster. There are Republicans who don't want to talk to a pollster. There are Democrats who are supporting Trump, or Republicans supporting Harris. So this is one of those elections where you just don't know how the polling is going to. I mean, every election you can kind of say that. But so this will be very interesting.
Particularly unclear. This one
we hope
unclear.
that we get the results on election night. Otherwise, I believe, and I was talking about this with Alex before the show, is I believe that when the moon enters Capricorn on election night, as soon as the happy optimistic Sagittarius, everybody's in a good mood, and then Sirius Saturn takes over in Capricorn. However, the ruler of Capricorn, Saturn, is retrograde. Then you go to Aquarius. The ruler of Aquarius, Uranus or Saturn, depending on which, both are retrograde. Then you go to Pisces, and Neptune and Jupiter, the rulers, modern or traditional, are retrograde. I believe it is not until the moon.
Okay, I was going to say it had to be something more than Mars that you were looking at there. Yeah, so you're
right,
okay.
So the moon, I believe that when the moon ingresses into Aries and immediately trines Mars, who is
that's
direct,
when you're going to get the outcome. Yeah.
That is when I believe the election week.
That I understand a lot more than this idea that Mars is in the shadow. Yeah, that makes sense to me a little bit. I could see the logic.
So the Mars is the only planet in the succession of days after the election that is direct, and so I believe that if all the rulers of the moon signs are all retrograde, then we might actually get our first.
The problem with that is you're having your cake and eating it too a little bit there, because you're saying, well, Mars is in the shadow, but then you're saying, well, Mars is the only one direct, so he's going to give us the outcome.
The other ones are, but again, and so when Mars goes retrograde, the outcome will be challenged. So I am not saying that everybody is going to accept the outcome. That is not going to happen. Neither side may accept the outcome because we are divided as a country. However, when Mars does go retrograde, you will see more of these, results being debated and discussed and contested in courts and whatnot. And we already see that is about to play out. Everybody's talking about it. So I believe that when the moon ingresses into Aries and immediately trines a direct but in shadow Mars, is when CNN or Fox or one news organization is going to say, we can now project so and so and so is going to be president. That's all I'm saying. I'm not saying this technique
Interesting.
allows us to predict who's going to win, but I believe
Okay.
it may take 4 or 5 days based on what certain swing states are telling us that, hey guys, it's going to take us at least a couple of days to count. And the margins are going to be razor thin. 100,000 votes here in one state, 40,000 in another state. That's what everybody's.
That's where we differ, because, like I said, given that Trump was polling 6 and 8 points behind and still made it close enough to win, like if he was that far behind and he's dead even this time, he should be 6 points ahead. In which case, it's going to be decided. 6 points is a huge.
Well, I mean
that's a good argument.
That assumes that the polling errors is the same. Now.
Well, yeah.
But yeah, I think we should move on though to SJ's presentation here. Let me turn the screen back on. Yeah, here we go.
All right, should I jump in now? Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off.
Yes. Welcome, SJ. Thank you for joining us, and we're excited to hear what you have to say about the election.
Wonderful. I just want to say, Gary, thank you so much for that very lucid, calm, and just really matter-of-fact presentation. I really enjoyed it. And you're going to see how I changed. You actually showed me something there that is quite fascinating and actually plays a determinative factor, at least in terms of one of the techniques that I'm going to use. So I'm kind of, anyhow, you'll see when we get there, the Aries ingress chart, my delineation of it. But yeah, everybody, what's up? How are you doing? Look, it's a crazy time. I think one of my high level points is that we're in unprecedented and crazy times in just the world, and particularly in America with, Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries next year. And so I think we could be set to see, things like we've never seen before, contingent elections, all of this stuff is in play. I guess what I'm saying here is I'm not surprised with any kinds of wildness that I'm going to see through the TV or on my feeds at any moment, even today through really the next 4, 5, 7, 10, 20 years. So that's kind of this larger context. And a lot of what I'm going to talk about here is this larger context, because I think that's really the most important thing in terms of psychically and intellectually grappling with this moment. But anyhow, let me come back to this. Here's my summary of my little presentation. Saturn and Pisces work. So I'd done this about 18 months ago, looking at history of Saturn and Pisces in the U.S. presidential election. A note there is that was the first election had Saturn and Pisces. So that's the George Washington election. So there's something about the foundation of America itself and the office of the president with Saturn and Pisces that it's evoked with that. I'm going to do my own Aries ingress analysis, which, I think, I'm not sure, that may change a little bit after seeing what I've seen with Gary. Let's see, then the root chart horoscope analysis with DJT, KH, and Sibley, and then some cycle context work. Just the context that I think is maybe the most important thing actually for all of this. So, okay, let's keep going. I want to just move. I actually deleted some slides because I wanted to move fast. So you can find these videos here on my channel, Democrats Win Addendum. All that addendum is just some of the technical stuff that I kind of didn't explicate precisely, and I went back and did it so people, it's clear and precise and accurate. Okay, you can move there. That's my YouTube channel, SJ Anderson. You can find me there, sjanderson144.com. Here's the conclusions in those videos. I'm not going to walk through any of that, just give the conclusions. So there were 3 elections while Saturn was in Pisces in the DC Aries ingress, the year of the election in the last 150 years. All of them saw continuity with the party in power staying in power. That was Rutherford B. Hayes, Roosevelt, FD, and Clinton. So those were Aries ingress, Saturn and Pisces. You had continuity. And the conclusion with this work was just it appeared to be Saturn and Pisces as a continuity transit. It didn't show change. It showed continuity. The next point is that Saturn was in Pisces exclusively during a term. So you had 1905 to 1908 or the Clinton term. It was exclusively there in the second Clinton term. That party in power would win another term. So there's that conclusion. And then the final is that if Saturn was in Pisces during part of an earlier term and part of a potential extended term, the party already in power secured an additional term. And there's the dates. That's the case that applies in our context. Saturn was in Pisces for the first Democrat term, and then will extend into the part of the second Democrat term, which is the theory with this technique. Okay. And so here's the Aries ingress. And you can just see it here. There's Saturn in Pisces with the Aries ingress, as Gary pointed out, close to Venus. Beautiful Saturn, right? Awesome fifth house. And there it is. It's just like the 76 through 80, 36 through 40, or 64 through 68. Saturn was in Pisces for some of the first term of the Democrat, the Kennedy-Johnson term, the first term, and then Saturn was in Pisces for the Johnson second term. And so that conclusion would say Biden and the Democrats win, just the fact of that alone. Okay, you can keep pushing, Alex. Thank you. Okay, now this is the Aries ingress analysis. So I'm just going to skip to what Gary clued me into, was that actually that Saturn is what we would call bona fide by enclosure between Jupiter and Venus. And that's huge. Trump actually has that in his natal chart, in his Saturn in the 12th house. That's why people say Teflon Don, right? So that gives me a little bit of synchronistic pause around the conclusions here. I'm going to walk through these slides anyway, but I mean, that alone, I think you'll see in the slide I do this, where I try to weigh my read of the ingress and see whether it's party in power or opposition. And I conclude with these slides that the party in power would win. Seeing this, it's hard to make that conclusion just based on the Aries ingress analysis.
SJ, quick thing. What do you think about the Leo moon? And if you relocate,
it's here. Just pause GBT, because it's going to be here. That's part of my conclusion, is the Leo moon, and you'll see it here if that's okay. So actually, let me stay on that slide, Alex, please. I want to just run through the slide. So the analysis is the same. 10th house is party in power. You just analyze the rulers of the 10th and the nature of the 10th. And I'm kind of broader here with this technique a little bit. I'm not strictly using what is the ruler, what's the condition as the single domicile ruler. I like to broaden the analysis out and just include like planets in the house. So in this case, moon in the 10th, people with the party in power. That's an interesting delineation. The moon is the people. Look at in this chart, that moon is quite strong in the sense that it is waxing. It's in the angular in the 10th with the party in power. Now, let me give you another caveat here. To really do all this stuff in my mind, you'd need to go through every Aries ingress, every election, look for how many times. I haven't done that with this. Okay. This is purely I did that with the Saturn and Pisces cycle work. With this, I just haven't done it. This isn't really my specialty, but that's really what you would need to do to reach a statistical conclusion and try to draw. Gary laid it out for us there with three of the past with the Aries ingress. This was more of an addendum to that other Saturn work, and just more of a just feeling into it, and then a delineation based on symbolism. But that's interesting. You note that the moon is received by its exalted ruler. So the sun is exalted here and receiving that moon, and it's a close separating trine, but we have a principle of reception in astrology by sign. You like that. The moon is supported there in that sense. The aspect from the 6th to the 10th, that's also an ancient text. You see, when planets can aspect the 10th from the 6th, you get a little bit more of an interesting, well, actually, there's no exact aspect here. That said, the nature of the 6th and the 10th are connected in terms of our astrological system, that there is a elemental trine between the 6th, 2nd, and 10th. And so there's an affinity by sign element between the moon and its ruler here that might also provide some reasoning to think that there's a support for this moon or something like this. Okay, the night triplicity lord, and this is something where in my work I've kind of relied a lot on triplicity lord, simply because for certain signs like Leo, you have to get another ruler. You have to get more information. I mean, you've got the sun, but you can always layer in triplicity lords for every sign, but in particular, some of these fixed signs you really need to get some more information. And in that case, you bring Jupiter in, what we would say crematistikos, meaning close to that descendant, and quickened. And so the question is that Jupiter will feed the 10th, support the 10th, angular. Now, we also know it's doing a lot for Saturn in this case as the ruler of the 4th. And so then it becomes kind of layering in, is it the direct impact as the primary triplicity lord, or are these kind of tertiary layers or secondary where it's the rulers of the rulers of the rulers? And it becomes difficult sometimes to weigh those implications. But just know here, there is a kind of direct implication. Jupiter making a pretty decently close angle to the midheaven and right on the descendant, that's 11 degrees, and ruling the moon and ruling the 10th and they're angular. The only angular planet that would rule either the midheaven by all the forms of rulership or the IC by all the forms of rulership. This is the only angular planet if you're looking at simply triplicity, exaltation, or domicile rulership, and that would be assigned to the 10th. So that was the basis, just to cut to the chase, of my previous conclusion, or part of the basis that played a heavy role. It's also in its own Egyptian term, which gives it more strength, and there you go. So, okay, please, next slide, Alex, thank you. So, okay, this is the opposition. That's the analysis of the party in power. Go to the opposition party, and right away, Mars right on the IC. We've seen that, at least symbolically, this cycle where you have these events that have been, at least reported as attempts. I'm a little bit more questioning on what really happened with those, just to be honest and be transparent. I think ketchup on the ear is plausible, but either way, it does match the symbolism here, whether it's a real event or it's the symbolism that's projected into the collective consciousness. You have violence on the IC against the party in power, so it's striking. You have Pluto there, which is, let's just set that aside. I don't want to even talk about Pluto. Let's just go, what's the domicile lord of the IC? Oh, actually, before we do that, Mars on the angle. I mean, that's a rough energy. It's a malefic. It's not, there's no dignity to that Mars. It's rough. It's shaking things up. It's, and it makes me just wonder about what that does to the 4th house in this case. I know rulership in our system is the outcome, but Mars on the IC, I just can't really see that as like a strength, just in general. Like Mars harms the party, the opposition party. Okay, so look where Saturn is, right in the 5th, amazing house, one of the best houses in astrology, with its exaltation lord. And you have it in my slide here, great house with exaltation lord Venus, domicile lord. It's that aspect, and then that enclosure that is really powerful here. That we miss things. I've been into this chart a lot. I just have never seen that. So pardon me, everyone, but that's really good for that Saturn. It's undeniable. If you look at the night triplicity lord, you've got now Mercury ruling Aquarius in the 6th. So, you've got that cadency, you've got that kind of weakness with Chiron. You've got it there in its own Egyptian term. That gives it some strength. So anyhow, let's keep going. And so my conclusion, when I weighed all of this before, I was just kind of saying, look, it's close. It is close in my view. And I think that the sun receiving the moon and that fire trine, to me, with the angular Jupiter, beat this idea of Mars on the IC, the aversion from Saturn and Pisces, and then layering in that Saturn and Pisces work. But here, it's hard for me to reach that conclusion. I'm just going to say that I think a benefic enclosure of Saturn, it really does empower that Saturn. I will say this: I've seen analyses of these charts be wrong, and I forgot which election it was. I have done a little bit of going back through, and if it was like every time the Aries ingress spoke to it. I've seen somewhere like the Aries ingress was clearly one party had some great strength, and then that party lost. And so anyhow, it's not that I think it's a really highly useful technique. And let me be clear about it. It's just, again, we're going to see how, I think let's just keep going to some of the next slides, because one of the things I really wanted to inject here was this slide. Is this the highest and best use of astrology's power? Because I don't think this is. Being in a couple of elections now and seeing and working with astrology in terms of just the pure like yes or no, give me A or B, tell me astrology. I just don't think, I'm beginning to think it's maybe not the best, definitely not the highest and best use of astrology's power, but I'm sort of questioning this method. And instead, because the left brain hard prediction will fail because the mind of God is a mystery. So that's why. And I think it's best used as a processing tool. And that's what I'm going to do in a couple of more of these slides. I know it might be a little bit out of the scope of this, but it's important for me to do it here. And by the way, this was in ISAR, UAC 2018. There was a whole panel on it, a lot of your faves debating. Of course, Stephen Force was saying its prediction is killing astrology. That was the premise. I don't think it's killing astrology, don't get me wrong. I think it's what is predictive about astrology. How do we feel into its predictive powers? And that's a more complex question than simply A or B, tell me. And I think we might not even be as close to like 50-50. And in fact, I will say here, if you go to the SkyScript forum right now, They were wrong. They've been wrong every election. So it's this aggregate of like, and some of the best astrologers in the world, and we just get it wrong repeatedly. That seems to be the truth. Astrologers fail at this task. Right now it is 60-28 Harris to Trump. And whereas the betting odds are way in favor of Trump right now. And that's been in the last couple of weeks, as Gary pointed out. Trump surged. Some of that might be being rigged by, this is their counter argument. It's these bettors in France that are connected to the Teal network that loves Trump, and they're kind of cooking the betting markets and and oftentimes the favorites, sometimes the money is to be made with the Harris pick in terms of betting. I mean, if you're looking to bet right now, you get great Harris odds. You can make a lot of money with that. So, okay. Just we don't have to go more into this, but me personally, this is an important conversation. I think we need to kind of, let's just move on.
No, I mean, I agree with what, I mean, I think this is an important point to make. And, I mean, I do stuff like the show where we're trying to predict the election, or I'll have the little quizzes on Twitter where it's like, oh, who is it, this or that. And, I think it's fun. Now, do I think that it proves astrology is real or not? No, but I think it's helpful to learn how it works. And I always like applying things. So I don't know, but I do think it's important to always acknowledge with a grain of salt that, like, okay, this is not I don't think that anyone should make judgments about astrology based on how any one person uses it. Right.
Yes. And I would just say for me, it's like, I like the predictive left brain models, but they have to be encased in what Gary said earlier. Let's see, right? That's more important, is what emerges, facts on the ground. Actually, it's more important than what the prediction was, because now we have a dialogue with reality and with the symbol map. And it's an ever-changing dialogue to help us make decisions in real time. And so that's why these next slides, I think, let me just finish this out with these next couple of slides, because and actually the corollary of that is simply, it doesn't matter who gets it wrong or right. What matters is, are we just going to keep going to try to navigate reality, to thrive and spiritually connect and all of that. Now, I realize I'm going longer here. Let me just see if I can cut through sharply with some of these. I guess I'm not going to do all of this delineation. I want to just point out one thing. Look where Harris's Saturn in Aquarius is. She is the Aquarian queen, right? That's her. She's got one of her final dispositors is Saturn in Aquarius. But look where it is, exactly opposite Trump's Mars ascendant. So that, to me, is, if there was someone that would stop Trump, I mean, this has done really well for Trump. I mean, he is an aggressor, and it's done very, very well for him. But this would be someone you would perk up to say, all right, that Saturn might be able to contain that. I mean, it's built in here. The other thing is that a lot of people are focused on the sun in Trump's chart in Gemini with Jupiter transiting there, and his nodes with Jupiter transiting there. But she's got the ascendant and her node right there as well. So there's no unique advantage, in my view, that this Jupiter in Gemini gives him over her. Now, we can wait the 11th, and the sun may be higher than the ascendant in the first, but I don't think it's different. They're both very good in terms of beneficial impact in just the ancient system. So, she's kind of the perfect candidate in a way here. She's got his Mars on his Mars, and you saw that in the debate. I mean, whatever you might think, well, in one sense, I thought she crushed him. I'm not even a fan of Kamala Harris. I'm not a fan of her at all, but just the energy of that, he was kind of just going on and on as she was sort of bringing back these points that, and the betting odds surged in her favor immediately after that debate. I think that was her Mars matching his Mars. He didn't have that advantage with her somehow. That Saturn Mars stuff could sort of put him in his place, so to speak, and then he wouldn't debate again. I think it was wise for him not to do that, because he was only going to get hurt from continuing to debate her, in my view. So, okay, let's just keep going here. And I want to go here. So I've said this. Let's keep going here, please. There's nothing more here. I guess I will say this quickly. Saturn or her midheaven in his 8th, where Saturn is currently transiting in his 8th. It's kind of classic endings. The 8th house being endings. So like her career ends him would be the delineation there. And I just want to say the caveat is that AA times are notoriously faked. And even with Trump, there's claims that it's a fake birth certificate. And I haven't gone deeply into that. I mean, we have to take it at face value in one sense, but in the other sense, I kind of don't trust the root charts of politicians. And I just wanted to mention that there. Okay, let's keep going, please. Thank you. This is really what I wanted to talk about today, more than anything else. Okay, actually, this is Sibley. Let's just do it quickly, this work. You see the Aquarius moon in the Sibley chart. You see where Kamala Harris's Saturn is, right on that moon.
Yeah.
And there's a sense, and Pluto will be, I think during the inauguration, there's stuff in Aquarius. I mean, the point here is simply that we know we're in an age of Aquarius by the Saturn-Jupiter conjunctions. We know that we're in an age of Aquarius because Pluto will be there for 20 years. We know Aquarius has been part of like new institutions for America. That was when the Constitution was formed, and a lot of the institutions of America, it wasn't Pluto and Capricorn. That was when it was declared independent. It took Pluto and Aquarius to institute the new structures. And so there's this idea simply that Kamala somehow becomes this, Saturnine queen of the people that, and this would be the thing about the symbolic new age that we're in, this age of air. She does capture that symbolically, and he really is of the old. I'm just talking about the level of the symbolism. When you go deeper, that gets a lot more tricky because of who the Democratic Party is aligned with and the old networks of power. And Trump is aligned with like the Teal Musk network to the extent that they are like the new Aquarian and Trump is their guy. That would be the counter argument here. But I do think that Harris, just first woman president alone, kind of is blowing out of the water everything that's happened in the first 240 years of this country. And it's a huge symbolic earthquake, just that alone, setting aside everything else. And I think it would fit here with this idea of the Aquarian moment we're in and Jupiter, Saturn. Well, actually, I'm going to skip that. That's a whole nother layer here, which is simply, actually, I'll say it here because we've already been talking about it. Remember when J6, those events happened, Mars was at 0 Taurus. It was anaretic Aries Mars into 0 Taurus Mars. That was J6. You had the shaman with the horns. Remember that guy, QAnon shaman? Mars and
I
Taurus.
remember that guy.
Yeah, but during this election, and we were just talking about earlier, Mars is going over 0 fixed 3 times. And it makes me think that we're triggering the J6 stuff, right? Just by degree in Mars, angular to it. And I think that there's a case to be made that if this is correct and Kamala becomes the president, you've got already there's going to be political violence. I mean, it's going to be stop the steal 2, guaranteed stop the steal 2.0. I mean, it's just guaranteed. And because Mars is hitting those same degrees, it makes me inclined to think that could be an outcome that would fit the symbolism as we're processing reality as it unfolds. Okay, keep going, please, because there's a couple more things I just want to work through this. So there would be Kamala. She's the Aquarian queen. That's the Thoth Tarot. This is the corresponding card to Aquarius. You see the woman. That would be DJT, right? This is the Aquarian queen. But this is the problem with Aquarius, is that it's not dreams, and this is where we start getting into, it's not just rainbows and, Fruit Loops or whatever. There's a real problem is that we're coming into like Kamala was a cop, Kamala was a cop. And I am concerned if she wins, what kind of is the stuff we're talking about? Censorship, control structure, enforcement against this stop the steal movement, that would be where you would see this Aquarian Kamala Harris as a cop emerge, which it seems like they would have to do it, right? Because there's going to be resistance immediately if she wins. Immediately, that's where I think about the Mars retrograde, Gary. It's not that the election is delayed; it's that all that pent up rage and anger around the results is what the Mars stuff is, and it's the 3 triggers to So anyhow, that's where I go with that. Let's just keep going. Okay, there's a World War I, Eugene Debs, right? Free speech during wartime. We know World War III's. We're entering into major World War III resonances here very, very soon. And so that's another way to do this. Like, who's going to be the World War III person? And if it's Kamala, you're going to shut down anti-war movements. And with Trump, I think, definitely. But it's, facial recognition technologies coming in. These are at the airports now. I haven't had to go through these. I haven't flown since they've been implemented in the American airports. But basically, we're in a digital prison grid that's emerging as a part of the Aquarian. And she would be the cop that's controlling all of that. And during a time of war, right? So, okay, keep going, please. There's only a couple more slides. I think this is the one I'm most interested in. Okay, actually, we can skip over this. We just know they're talking about stop the steal already, the Republicans,
right.
And they're setting it up. So let's keep going. It just fits a scenario. Actually, you can stay. Just stay here for 1 second. So the scenario is this: where's the political violence? What's more likely, like a stop the steal, or, and I have to say it here because it's part of the likelihood. We had the George Floyd protests. We've seen the left violence. So I don't think the violence has to be only this Republican stop the steal stuff. I think that if Trump wins, we already know you're going to have likely some violence. I'm just not so sure it's at the level of like organized against the political system, roots of the Constitution stuff, because it hasn't really been that in the past. It's been more like the cops are hitting us, or police violence and those types of protests. So maybe this tips us into the Civil War residences that are coming next year. It just fits to me that like you would have a stop the steal. It just fits all of the transits that are coming with America quite well. And is another reason why I'm just inclined to think Kamala will win. So here's the stuff I kind of really want to talk about. Let me just go to this final slide, because this is if Trump wins. And we have to consider this now more than we've considered it, because it's looking good, right? Betting market's way out for Trump. Polls, like Gary mentioned, a lot of it in for Trump. I'm very concerned about a Trump victory because I think that it would be the kind of perfect psyop. And I know I'm getting out here, right, a little bit farther into right field or whatever field, but which president is going to
here
be
on this program?
Okay, I'm just thinking, which president will get the corn-fed good old boys from the middle of America to fight World War III for what I think are interests that are not American, right? Particularly, we're talking about the Iran stuff, which he has already said, him and Vance, they want to just hit Iran hard. I mean, it's just way bellicose to attack Iran, way more than. This is why this Trump is, to me, uniquely dangerous, not because of the other reasons that people are saying. It's because it's not the 2016 Trump, which is like, I'm just an outsider and we're going to drain the swamp. This is like a war Trump. And you see him, he's already shrouded in the flag here. It's what H.L. Mencken, fascism comes to America, shrouded in the Bible and the flag. If Kamala wins, it's weak. It's in a weak America, weak war machine, because no one wants to go to war for her. Not even the left does. But if DJT wins, it's this resurgent right. He's been made a martyr. They've deified him already. And so it's highly concerning for me if he wins. And this is part of the processing tool of astrology, because we know as soon as the election's over, if we wake up and Trump is the president, it changes the whole context of the next 3 or 4 or 5 years, given the Uranus and Gemini, Neptune and Aries stuff. Because now he's the guy you got to resist, especially if he starts going into World War III like he wants to, or at least it appears at one level he's claiming he wants to. I think that's what concerns me, is that you start getting people saying, let's go to war. It's like the Bush years. We were all around for that. That was the sell point. Patriotism for war against Islam. And it's set up. It's just this setup scares me, because you're going to start having people say, go to war for our God, Trump. And you don't want that. That's not how you want the reality to unfold, especially as Aries becomes the accentuated sign, Saturn there, Neptune there next summer. So that's my fear with this, is that the Trump, we use astrology as a processing tool. And now you start seeing how this Aries stuff looks with the Trump president. And it's not good in my view. It's not good. So they're already setting it up. It's Iran that tried to assassinate Trump. So, okay. Enough of my little political rants there. Let's come back here. You can find me at sjanderson144.com, Patreon sjanderson144, YouTube sjanderson144, Instagram sjanderson233. I look forward to connecting with you all there. Thanks for humoring this presentation, and sorry to take up a little extra time.
No, that is totally fine. That was a great presentation. I really enjoyed it. I think what you said there at the end about because I hear a lot of people saying, oh, Kamala's the World War III president, but that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I feel like Trump would be a better wartime president, just in terms of mobilizing people to get involved in a war. I feel like Trump would be more effective at that. So I agree with you on that last point, honestly. And I mean, so I guess I can go next and say what I think. So I don't have a whole presentation prepared. I will pull up some charts, but I mean, I do have a presentation prepared. It's just not fancy with slides, right? So here, let me do this first. Let's here we go. First, I'm gonna just pull up Trump, right? And we'll look at his chart. So, I mean, I went about this in a different way than Gary and SJ did. I mean, they, are probably better astrologers than me and know about Aries ingress charts and all of that. I haven't really practiced with any of that stuff, and so I decided to use what I know, which is the natal astrology, right? And so all of my uh, things is going to just be based on simple techniques, transits, and progressions that both the candidates are going through, and seeing like who looks like they're having a more favorable time during the election and the inauguration, right? So that's how I decided to approach this. Now, let's see. Okay, so for Trump, like what does Trump have? Let me get the transits pulled up with him.
Just gonna be right back.
So here we go, right? So this is the transits for right now, right? Obviously, this is not how it's going to be on election night, but a lot of these transits aren't going to change much. So here we go. Here's what we've got. We've got Jupiter trine his Jupiter, right? And he's had this all year, right? And will continue to have it. He also has Saturn trine Saturn, right? Also very good, right? Saturn trine Saturn is a transit that you've seen with other presidents take power. I think Obama had it. Other people had it. That's going to be good, right? That's already good for Trump. Now, secondly, uh, Saturn is trine now, but next year it's going to be 10th from his natal Saturn, which is a good period in the Saturn cycle. That's like a culminating moment in everyone's Saturn cycle. So Saturn 10th from Saturn is very good. Now, Saturn is going to be stationing during the election on the angles of Trump's sun and moon, right? This is not very good, right? It seems, I mean, it could go either way, but I don't know. Saturn T squaring both your lights and stationing, not the best, right? However, Trump is also going to have on the election. So let me animate this forward to the election. So here on election night, here we go. So Trump is going to have the sun is going to be 12th from the moon, right? And he's also going to be having a lunar return, right? So both these little mandala cycles are reaching points of renewal, right? Now, that's going to be important when I look at Kamala's chart, but I'll just mention that now. Now, the last thing I wanted to say about Trump's chart for now is in his tertiary progressions, right? So I really like messing around with tertiary progressions, and there's a little technique I've kind of discovered, and that is when Saturn stations in the tertiary chart, it is associated with changing where you live and changing your career. Oftentimes, you move in order to effectuate a career change. I was doing a bunch of last minute research on this last night and contacted 8 different people that I knew, and all of them said that Saturn, it aligned with these shifts for them when Saturn was stationing in their tertiary chart. And that's what's happening on inauguration day for Trump. Trump is getting this Saturn station in his tertiary chart, right? So that's very, very good. And it implies, that if he wins, he's going to have to move and he's going to have a different career. It's going to be both, right?
And it's on Regulus, dude.
I know.
Isn't it?
I know.
Wow.
It is.
Near, yeah.
It is
Nearly
on
Virgo.
yeah. So this is looking good for Trump so far. All right. Now, but there's a few other things we need to look at, Harris's chart. All right. So let me pull that one up. All right. So we got Harris here. All right. So here, let me do the bi-wheel with the transits. All right. So, all right. What has she got going on in the background right now? All right. So she's got Jupiter in the first. All right. That's very good. Right. So very good for her. Jupiter in the first is never bad, even though it's in Gemini. I don't really care that Jupiter is in detriment in Gemini. I think it's still good for her. Now, she does have Saturn is going to be stationing during the election in her 10th house. This seems bad, right? Saturn stationing in your 10th, I don't know. It doesn't look great, right? Now, she also has from the moon sign, Jupiter is third from the moon, and then next year it will be fourth from the moon. Both of these are bad, right? Neither one of those transits are good. Jupiter being third from the moon versus Jupiter being fourth. Both of them are inauspicious. She will also have Saturn third from Saturn when Saturn goes into Aries, right? That's also not good, right? Now, she will be having Saturn conjunct the moon soon, right? Now, this transit, is often associated with increased responsibilities, elevation in status, right? Changes like that. However, I went back and checked her because, there's different ways we can apply the timing techniques for Saturn. In the Vedic text, it says that Saturn gives the Gochara result of entering the next sign 6 months before it actually enters. So I was thinking, well, maybe she's going to get this effect of Saturn stationing or Saturn conjunct the moon now because it's about 6 months before Saturn changes into Aries. But I went back and looked and checked her life, right, to see what was going on. And the last time when she became a DA, right, in San Francisco, this happened February 1998. At that time, Saturn was in the middle of Aries, right? So she did not get the boon of Saturn conjuncting her moon until Saturn was in the middle of the sign last time. So I think that we can surmise based off that it will be the Saturn direct station before it conjuncts her moon that is actually going to give her the result of Saturn conjunct her moon, right? Based on that. Now, let me go back to the notes here. Okay. So I think that that's going to arrive too late, basically. Whatever benefit Harris is going to receive from Saturn conjuncting her moon is going to be too late for this election because it's not going to happen until Saturn's in the middle of Aries. Now, what about Kamala's progressions? I'm not going to pull this up because she's not really having anything notable happen in her progressions, except Uranus is stationing in her secondary progressions, but this lasts for years, so it's not really super relevant. Now, I did want to say one more thing about her chart before I move on to the last thing I want to talk about, and that is, here we go, on election night, where are the sun and the moon for Kamala? So the sun is in the 8th house from her moon, right? And the moon is 10th from the natal moon, right? So to me, this is like, whereas Trump had with these mandala cycles a renewal and like a starting over, this seems more like a peak, right? So just on that, I have to give, based on the sun and the moon placement on election night, I have to give Trump the edge on that. Now, I've gone back and forth. I went back and forth and couldn't decide, right? Because I tried to put any kind of desire I had aside for what would happen and just imagine that these people were clients coming to me. Now, the thing that I ultimately came down to was the Mars retrograde, right? So let's go back to Trump's chart. Now, on election night, on inauguration, here we go. 1 second. Sorry, guys. So Trump and then transits, view. We got to go forward. Okay, so on inauguration day. All right, this is close enough. Here we go. Yeah, on inauguration day. Mars is conjunct Trump's Saturn, right? And it's retrograde, right? What does this mean, right? Well, traditionally, Mars conjunct Saturn is a transit that is associated with vanquishing enemies, overcoming obstacles, right? So I went back and checked and I was like, all right, well, what happened the last time Mars was retrograding over Trump's Saturn, right? And what did I find, right? Well, I found something kind of interesting. Here it is. Now, here we go. So this is what happened the last time Mars was retrograde and conjunct Trump's Saturn. He gets his bankruptcy plan approved by the court. There's, billions of dollars tied up in this deal, millions of dollars, hundreds of millions. And this going through made Trump into the mogul that he is, or he later became in the 90s and early 2000s. Like this deal going through was instrumental for Trump's continued rise and success, because this property group had been floundering and was just terrible, right? And Trump pulled it out. He got his plan approved, right? So he was successful against the creditors, which would have been his enemies, right? So when we put all of that together, now I also went back and checked for Harris, right? And during previous Mars retrograde periods in Cancer, there was no publicly available info for anything that was going on in her life. So we can assume there that it's uneventful. You might think that that's a bad assumption on my part, but you can argue that all you want. I don't really care. I think it's a fair assumption to make. Now, the other thing is with Harris, if we go to her chart, this Mars retrograde, so Mars is approaching the angles of, all right. So her Saturn is here. So Mars is going to approach an opposition to her Saturn, but then it's going to retrograde and it's going to go back into T-squaring her sun and moon, right? So, Mars retrograding back into a square with both of her lights, that doesn't seem good to me, right? I just can't think of a way that on inauguration day, she's got Mars retrograde, T-square both her lights. That doesn't seem like a celebration to me, right? Versus Mars conjunct Saturn, that's like victory. So that is what it came down to for me. That's why I have to call it for Donald Trump. And I think Trump is actually going to win the presidency. Now, I do think I said a while ago, I said back in May on a live stream, I said that I thought that the election, there would be a delay in the results and in counting. And I still agree with that. I think that there's going to be some kind of foolishness that happens. I was looking at Mercury to try and see any Mercury things that were going on. And Mercury is crossing declination with Pluto exactly on the day of the election, which not sure what that means, but it doesn't seem good, right?
Gary knows, as
so,
they say.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think that we may not know the result of this for up to a week, if not more. And I think that whatever the result is, it's going to be heavily contested, and that there may be court involvement and other things like that. Another thing that gives precedence to this idea is that Mars retrogrades around election time have resulted in delayed results in the past. When Mars retrogrades happen within a couple of months of the election, it seems to be screwy. In particular, the 1992 election, there was a delayed result on that. So between that Mercury crossing declination with Pluto and the Mars retrograde, I think that it will definitely be contested, and we won't know exactly how it's going to turn out. Definitely not on the night, but maybe within a week. I would say within a week, I think we'll at least have a projected winner. So that was the way I decided to go about it, which I think is different than everyone else, but I don't know. That's what I got.
Those trines are really interesting. The Trump trine, Jupiter, Saturn trine, Saturn. That's a good find.
Yeah, and the transits at inauguration are really fascinating to me too. Yeah,
inauguration definitely looks good for Trump.
The lights T squares, that's nasty for Harris. Yeah, no doubt about it.
Yeah, I don't know. I was just
Alex, what do you think about?
That can't be good. Like, it just can't be good, right? Like, there's no way that it's good. The only way it would be good is if it would manifest as like having to give up something in order to get something else that's good and make space for something else. That's the only way I can see Mars T-squaring.
If she was going to become the top cop in the land, if she was going to be appointed as Attorney General, it would be good because Mars is a cop planet. It's like it separates the good people from the bad people. So, and then Mars is the square is associated with Mars and the Thema Mundi. So, I mean, that may be that way, but she's not running for an appointment. She's running for president. So, yeah, no.
I mean, you could go with the idea that it's simply renewing her moon, and it's going to take some time. And the direct station is like her finally winning the office, and there's some kind of delays. I mean, I think there is ways to kind of swing it. If she wins, it could explain like the transition, and maybe it's a challenge. I mean, clearly she's under pressure. It's a lot of pressure, man, just to be out there. I mean, that could explain it too, just having the pressurization. But
I mean, Trump's been running for 9 years. Kamala's been running for 2 months, right? So
that is true. Yeah.
And Alex, what do you think about the fact that Kamala's moon is in Aries with a mutual reception with Mars in Cancer?
That's what I was going to say too. Yeah.
I mean, that's fine, but it's still square both of her lights. Like that just doesn't. I mean,
yeah,
it's Mars, and the square is Mars's aspect, right? So the square, when Mars is making a square, that's when like the true fundamental nature of Mars comes out, and it's it's usually a separating influence, right? It's a cutting, it's a severing type of influence.
Yeah.
So
reception will modify that somewhat, but it's not going to make it a trine.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with you, Gary.
I'm just thinking it could mitigate it somewhat, such that the pressure, the Mars stuff's there, no doubt about it. Tension, pressure, all of that square energy. It's just, does that mean she lost the election? And I don't know. I mean, because that could be present in the event of her winning, and maybe that would be what look. If she wins, think about first of all, these people. Is she really controlling it all with her decision making? My answer is no, and I don't think Trump is either. These people are part of systems behind them of power. So as soon as you win, you become encased in a system of extremely powerful things that you're kind of trapped in, and so I think it could fit that as well. Anyhow.
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, it could go either way, right? And I'm really torn about this, right? I was up all night last night trying to decide, and I was going back and forth. I was on the phone with Gal, and we talked to the phone for 2 hours, going back and forth, trying to, is it Trump? Is it Harris? Is it Trump? Is it Harris? Like, we could not decide.
Wow.
But I mean, ultimately, what made me give it to Trump is the fact that he's had good luck with Mars retrograde conjunct his Saturn in the past, right? He also has this Saturn stationing in his tertiary progressions, which not a single person that I contacted last night to confirm that this technique worked said it didn't. And then there was, Kamala Harris has Mars retrograding back into a T-square with her lights, which just seems bad. So, that's really what made me give it to Trump. Honestly, I mean, I don't know. I was very, very conflicted about this one. So I am not going to brag too much if I get it right, because this is really, really close.
I just wanted to say this quickly. I wanted to go back because the idea of the election being contested, certainly there's the local question of like before you get into the media anoints a winner, right? That becomes what we really mean by the election ceasing to be contested at one level, is when Reuters basically says, okay, we call it. But we know from 2016 that there was this ongoing contestation of the election with what we call lawfare. Now we have a name for it. And I think that that's my Trump scenario, that the Civil War echoes come through. It's going to be lawfare against Trump one way or the other. I mean, that's going to reappear on the scene. And, third impeachment, a fourth impeachment. I mean, that's all in play. So there may be an ongoing challenging, like whether it's Russian or Iran, right? They've got Iran now saying, so they're going to use it to propagandize around no matter what, either way. And we're in for
Wait, what's Iran saying?
They're saying that Iran is basically going
right
after
back,
Trump,
guys.
and that the assassination attempts were Iranian. So I don't know the rest of those
I
claims.
mean, they did hack his campaign. Iran
And then
hacked.
they're saying that. They're saying China hacked his. So I just don't. Anyhow, my read on all that is that they're going to use whatever they need to go after Trump. I mean, that's just what they've
Well,
done in the
Thiel and
past.
Musk want Vance. They just want Trump to win because Vance cannot win, being the head of the ticket. So they want Trump, and then after a couple of years, they'll just get Vance in there to do their bidding. Young, but up and coming Vance, 43, 42, 43 years old. So that's kind of what everybody knows. They want to use Trump to win because without Trump, you cannot win if you're a Republican.
Nope.
And so once you win with Trump, then you take advantage of his age and then you run an administration with a bunch of.
What do you think about Tulsi Gabbard going Republican? I mean, she might be on the ticket with Vance next time, assuming like no weirdness, but just Trump.
Oh no, we are not talking about 2028. Come on, you guys.
I
I get to leave for 2 seconds, and this is what happens.
Vivek Tulsi,
right.
2028.
All right.
Okay, guys. All right. Gal, you want to jump into your presentation here? We can.
Yeah.
Start,
So I don't have a slide deck, but Alex is going to pull up certain.
Certain things. So you
screenshots.
first wanted me to pull up this, right?
Yeah, and then correct, and then after that, the electoral college.
I got you. I know the format. So first, I mean, this is what you want, right?
Yeah. So we wanted to look at Michigan. So Trump has only won once, and that was 8 years ago. So we have to look at his victory and why did Trump's challenger Hillary Clinton lose, right? The first thing we want to remind our viewers is that 2016 was a very narrow election in 3 swing states: Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. The election in 2016 was decided across 77,000 votes. Michigan, the total, you can see it was 10,000 votes, the margin of Trump in 2016 against a very unpopular Hillary Clinton. If you look at Wisconsin and Pennsylvania for 2016, you will essentially see, I mean, these are the kind of margins of people who live in all our neighborhoods. Okay. And that margin is decided the 2016 election against Hillary Clinton.
Yep.
So Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan were all within very close margins. So I just wanted to kind of set that up this way. Now, if you want to, in 2020, we don't have to look at 2020, but 2020 was Biden was winning against Trump in these swing states by maybe a percentage or 2. So it was pretty close as well in the swing states. So now if you want to pull up the Electoral College, so essentially the approach that I've taken is in order to win the presidency of the United States, you don't have to win the popular vote. You only have to win the Electoral College vote, right? So based on that, what I looked at is, okay, can we figure out a chart for the Electoral College? The Electoral College was a thing in itself. Founding fathers and other folks at the time in power, they basically just, September 4th, 1787, when the convention was going on to decide the Constitution. What is the Constitution going to entail? That was all this convention that was happening in Philadelphia for a few months. So September 4th is when folks started proposing the Electoral College. So we have to be mindful of which chart do we look at for the Electoral College. September 4th, that's one option. This is when they started proposing that we adopt an Electoral College method to decide the president, right? Presidency and stuff. Then we have September 6th, where all the members in Congress at the time came in agreement with what the Electoral College should be. So for the purposes of our discussion, I have chosen this date, but I invite viewers to play around with September 4th, September 6th, and the next slide, which will be, this is when the Constitution was signed, wherein the word electors is mentioned. So this is when the Constitution was formally signed. So we can also look at September 17th at noon as an example to kind of get an idea of what the Electoral College chart will look like. However, if you go at the page below, at the bottom, they do say that even if the Constitution was formally signed, all the way at the bottom, it will say synopsis. Basically, the signing of the Constitution did not legally enact it. The Constitution states that 9 of the 13 states would need to ratify it, blah, 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 whatever. So for the purposes of this discussion, I was kind of going back and forth, and I'm like, okay, which chart do we want to look at? So I've decided to go with the September 6th chart, which is the most problematic for Kamala Harris. And for one of the reasons why is because September 6th is when the idea of the Electoral College was agreed to, right, as per the headline from our government websites. So taking a look at the Electoral College for September 6, 1787, I decided to look at the synastry between, and again, we have untimed here because we don't know what time to look at on September 6th, but we've just kind of put together a roughly around noon chart. But this chart is not in itself. It has Pluto in Aquarius. It has Saturn in Aquarius, which kind of matches Kamala, Saturn, and Aquarius. So that's one kind of interesting thing that I saw here. So I want viewers to pay attention to the Pluto and Saturn here at 14 and 24. And what I want, and Jupiter at 24 here, Gemini. So what I would like to do now is do a synastry first with Hillary Clinton, a bi-wheel with Hillary Clinton on the inner wheel, and the Electoral College, because if Hillary Clinton had received 77,000 more votes in 2016, we would have had a different president. So why did Hillary lose in 2016? And if we look at the synastry between her chart and Electoral College, the very first thing you see is her Mars, her Pluto, and her Saturn are in a direct applying opposition to Pluto and Saturn for the Electoral College. Now, I'm not a 30-year synastry expert, but if you pull together two charts where it had a Mars-Pluto opposition, a Pluto-Pluto opposition, and a Saturn opposition, that chart is screaming no. This is basically saying, yes, she won the popular vote, which may be the fact that perhaps if this is the right chart, then the moon in Cancer is trining her moon. I don't know if we can determine which planet will give us the popular vote in this chart and whether the September 6th chart is the right chart. But I wanted to simply focus on a few key planets and ignore the moon for the purposes of this thing. Now, Hillary Clinton lost in 2016 by 77,000 votes in 3 states. It took Saturn, Pluto, and Mars to be in direct opposition to the Electoral College's Mars and Pluto, Pluto and Saturn, for Hillary to barely lose by 77,000 votes. And so if we actually take a look at Kamala's chart with the Electoral College, we get a slightly different picture. It is not a complete home run. There are some things which don't give me the complete confidence that it's going to be her. But what we see here is that Jupiter in the Electoral College chart is on her ascendant. Saturn in the Electoral College chart is trining her ascendant. What gives me pause is that Saturn in the electoral college chart at 24 Aquarius is squaring her Jupiter and opposing Mars. However, because she has Saturn in Aquarius retrograde within a few degrees, you would, for the purposes of this thing, for this discussion, I would give her the slight benefit of the doubt, only because the September 6th chart may not even be the exact chart that you would actually want to look at. If you actually keep going to September 6th, 7th, 8th to the 17th, Saturn retrogrades to 23 degrees and basically stops squaring her Jupiter. What does give me pause is that the electoral college's Saturn is directly opposed to her Mars, whereas Trump's Mars has separated from the opposition to the electoral college. So that is definitely one factor where I can't say this is a slam dunk for Harris, but given the fact that she has natal Saturn retrograde in Aquarius within a few degrees from the electoral college Saturn, I would tend to give her the benefit of the doubt that she can overcome the margins of victory needed to win electorally that Hillary Clinton could not do in 2016. And so this is, she doesn't have the Saturn opposition. She has essentially a Saturn, conjunct Saturn, which I would tend to give her a little bit of advantage. Again, we are comparing Kamala's chart to Hillary's chart. We're not comparing her right now to, she has to simply overcome what Hillary could not. And that is the kind of logic that I'm using here to say that, can she do that? And I would say yes, given how close these margins are going to be. Now, she will win the popular vote. It's possible because Hillary Clinton won the popular vote in 2016. Biden won the popular vote in 2020. New York and California and other blue states have so many Democrats everywhere that when you actually do the final counts, the popular vote may be Kamala. But again, we are focusing on the electoral college here. And so this is the toughest chart for Harris because Saturn is squaring her Jupiter and Saturn is opposing her Mars, but she has natal Saturn pretty much right there. So this is where I would tend to give her the benefit of the doubt that she may be able to overcome this. Again, if I'm wrong, and there's a good chance that given this election of some of the salient arguments that Alex and Gary have made about Trump, and again, I, like Alex, wrestled with this for quite a while, and I just had to make a determination before our Zoom call. I would narrowly, based on the synastry between the Electoral College chart and Kamala Harris's chart, basically say that she would be able to overcome the narrow defeat that Hillary Clinton had in 2016. And that's the ball game here, is 3 states, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, Michigan, or 4 of the other 7 states. And that's the ballgame here. So this is kind of the logic that I wanted to use for determining this compared to Hillary Clinton's chart. Hillary Clinton's chart had a Saturn opposition, it had a Mars opposition to Pluto, and it had a Pluto opposition to Pluto directly within degrees. And Harris does not have that bad of a chart for me to basically say, okay, can she overcome what Hillary Clinton could not? Right. And in 2016, Hillary Clinton she skipped Wisconsin. She didn't even campaign there. Right. So Kamala Harris is not taking any chances. Her crowd sizes seem to be quite decent, her rallies. And again, Kamala Harris is not some politician that people are gravitating towards because of her personality. They're gravitating to because she's the leader of the anti-Trump movement. Right. So obviously you understand that. And she is the last person standing for the anti-Trump movement. And now, if Kamala Harris did not have her Saturn in Aquarius, I would basically say, yeah, this election is definitely, but given the fact that she has Saturn in Aquarius, this was alluding to what SJ was talking about, Saturn in Aquarius, I believe that she may be able to narrowly win when all the votes in the swing states are counted. So this is kind of my logical argument of why Hillary Clinton could not overcome the absolutely crazy, insane synastry she had with the Electoral College. And I invite viewers to look at September 4th, September 6th, September 17th, play around with various dates and look back at past presidents and see how they're able to, which chart do we think aligns the best? But I just wanted to kind of show our viewers certain headlines from our government pages on why I ended up picking September 6th. Again, not a slam dunk here, but a much, much better chart than Hillary Clinton. And that's all she has to overcome, given how the margins were pretty tight 8 years ago. And because we're talking about an 8-year Venus cycle, this is kind of relevant to 2016 and so on and so forth. So this is essentially my argument here.
Yeah, no, I dig it. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I know you want to probably go on to another chart, but I just wanted to know what you thought about the fact, because like she's got Rahu here conjunct the ascendant, which is, not good. And then there's like Mars and Jupiter on top of it. Like,
she's got a mutual reception with Mercury in Mars's sign and Mars in Mercury sign. So there's a mutual reception without any aspect, like an aversion. So that is considered a mitigating factor in Hellenistic in some ways. So I would not count that out. Trump has a lot of mutual receptions also. He's got, Mercury is in Leo for Electoral College. I don't think we can see it because our things are, if you want to kind of get the chart a little bit up.
Yeah. Which do you want me to do, Trump and the Electoral College next?
Yeah, but I just our photos in the back are hiding.
We can't see the outer wheel.
You can see Mercury in
the
Leo.
lowest area of the outer wheel.
I'll fix that.
So the reason why I didn't want to focus more on Trump and Biden's chart is because they both have won once. I wanted to focus on the loser's chart and then can Kamala overcome here? So yes, we can briefly look at Trump's chart and we can look at Biden's chart, but both
we don't have to. It's whatever you want to do.
Yeah, no, it's totally fine. I just wanted to kind of keep it here so that we can focus on why did Hillary Clinton lose and why Kamala Harris may be able to overcome what Hillary Clinton could, learning from her experiences 8 years ago. Biden and Trump, obviously, we can talk about their charts if we do a bi-wheel with the Electoral College, but both men have already won once. So we don't have to really talk about it, but I would invite viewers to kind of look at, what other patterns they see in the winners and so on and so forth. So that is essentially my argument here, that Kamala Harris has to win the Electoral College in order to win the presidency. And she can win the popular vote by 20 million votes, and she's not going to be able to be in office. So this is how I am narrowly giving the election to Kamala Harris, given our margins in 2016 were so tight with a very, very, very bad synastry chart with Hillary Clinton. So that's basically my kind of, in a nutshell, the argument around why Kamala may be able to overcome what Hillary Clinton could not. Now, if I'm wrong, then this Mars opposing the Electoral College Saturn definitely plays a big factor. So we shall see.
Okay. Well, is there anything else you wanted to? I guess we could talk about, just some closing remarks. Well, I sent the link to the first guy for a chart reading, and now actually,
if we can, Alex, would you mind pulling up Trump and Kamala's synastry really quickly?
Oh yeah, let's do that. Also, while I'm doing that, SJ, I know you had said that you needed to go after 2 hours. Are you okay to still stay on for one of the chart readings, or do you have to go?
I'll probably need to leave it in about 20 minutes from right now, 15 to 20 minutes from right now, but I can hang on until then.
Okay, cool. Yeah, no worries.
I have to run because the shop's closed here and I got to go out and get some stuff before they do. So
it's all good. I'm sure that the remaining people can handle it. All right, so here we go. Here we've got the synastry between Trump and Kamala.
So SJ pointed out, obviously, that Kamala's Saturn is opposing Trump's Mars and kind of is ascendant, but we don't really exactly know his ascendant, but Mars is there. I also wanted to point out that Kamala Harris's Saturn is applying to square Trump's midheaven. Whether his midheaven is at 24, 25, 26, it is squaring his midheaven. And in an applying square, and it's in a superior position known as overcoming in Hellenistic, where it's 10 signs from his midheaven. So I thought that was pretty noteworthy, that if there is any person, if there is someone that can stop Trump this time, it would be her. And her Saturn in Aquarius just keeps repeating in the Electoral College chart, in the Sibley chart, as SJ pointed out, where it is basically conjunct USA Sibley's moon. And I see here that her Saturn is, squaring her Trump's MC in an applying square. And Alex, if you don't mind, we can briefly go back to Hillary Clinton's synastry with Electoral College. I just wanted to point out one more thing. So in addition to her Mars, Pluto, and Saturn in a direct opposition, degree-based with Saturn and Pluto, we also see that Hillary Clinton's nodes at 23 Taurus and Scorpio are directly opposing Electoral College's Saturn. I mean, that seems significant, where you have Saturn square the nodes, where this is a fated event for her, and there was a lot of discussion why she couldn't overcome it. And perhaps this is a synastry where not only is this opposition with Mars, Pluto, and Saturn, but her nodes squaring Electoral College's Saturn. That seemed to me as also a collection of just a very bad synastry with Electoral College's chart. No matter which date you put in September, with her chart, it just seemed all kinds of bad, and Kamala just has to overcome, a couple 100,000 votes, if not even that many.
That's really fascinating in one way, because you asked why did, and she wrote a book about why she lost, but I don't think she actually addressed it. But the reason she lost is a poor electoral strategy.
Yeah.
She was relying on this blue wall that didn't exist.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting what you bring up, is that the Electoral College was her undoing, because her thinking about the Electoral College and her poor planning and poor strategizing regarding it is what did her in.
Yeah.
So it's a really interesting point.
And it's notable that it's her birthday today, and we were talking about her chart.
Yeah, it's funny. That is funny.
So I did not realize that until yesterday. I'm like, oh shit, it is October 26th, So that was quite interesting. Electoral College's Saturn at 24 is squaring her ascendant ruler as well, Mercury. So it is all kinds of bad for her if you pull these synastry charts together. And I would not wish the synastry on anybody. Not that you would have two people, because you would have to be really old to have a synastry chart like this, where you have a direct Pluto opposition. Now, Trump does have a Pluto at 10 degrees. So this is a situation where you have Pluto of Electoral College at 14 and Trump's Pluto at 10. So there is a Pluto opposition brewing for Trump against Kamala here, where Kamala does not have Pluto. But this is where we can get into discussions, because both Trump and Biden have won once, but Hillary Clinton has not. So I kind of wanted to focus on this more. But I would invite viewers to compare a September 1787 chart with Trump's chart, with Biden's chart, with past presidents, to kind of see if we can find patterns. And this way, instead of looking at everybody's transits and solar returns and solar arc directions, we might be able to kind of synthesize something looking at the Electoral College's chart for future elections, because that's how the presidency is decided and not by the popular vote.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I gotta hand it to you. It is a unique method
it's just
that I have
very
not
bad
seen
synastry
anyone else
all
use.
around for Hillary Clinton. And maybe we should send this video to her and be like, this is why you lost. So
yeah. No, it's certainly a unique method. I enjoyed that. I haven't seen anyone try and do synastry with the Electoral College yet. We'll have to see how it turns out.
There's some interesting comments too, where people are asking questions and kind of thinking aloud about how they would approach it. So I love that we have different methods here, because clearly it's helping people to think it over for themselves and see, well, how would I go about this? So that's very cool.
Yeah, no, I wanted to mention some of the comments, but it was just everyone was talking, so I didn't. Someone said, um, uh, oh yeah, someone says Mars and the angles of sun and moon often associated in bodily harm, injury, and failure. Someone else says, uh, curious if the Sibley chart for the next 4 years would reflect obvious policies going into effect for a clue.
That's a
Uh,
great idea. I
But
mean, yeah.
that's what I was talking about. With war, that's what I'm saying. Everybody's got to understand war is coming, period. I mean, astrologers aren't supposed to predict that, but you have Uranus and Gemini with the Sibley Uranus there, and Mars, the Sibley Mars in Gemini. And every time I mean, everybody knows this already, I think, but every time Uranus has gone through Gemini, America has been at war. So I don't think this is really, for me, it's not feeling like any kind of prediction. It's just kind of stating the obvious. And so that's what I was
yeah.
trying to do there. And Ari was, what is it? How do we process reality knowing that's happening? Well, if Trump wins, it means a certain thing. If Kamala wins, it means a certain thing. And, one thing I wanted to quickly say on that is that we know there's an anti-war movement now. We know we're in a resisting war movement in America. And you've seen the protests all over college campuses in 2024 basically being about that. And so I think if Trump wins and he ends up attacking Iran, which he assassinated Soleimani during his first term, and I'm just taking his language at face value. He's basically saying, get Iran, attack Iran in no uncertain terms. You're going to have built in a major anti-war movement that's already extant in America.
Yeah, but
And
there's
so,
an assumption there, SJ, that
Yeah.
attacking Iran automatically equates to war. And I mean, they've taken out, these leaders before and not resulted in war. So
that is an assumption, and I guess I'm just reading what the Israelis are saying now about what they're going to do. So what they're talking about is not just like one targeted assassination. They're talking
okay,
about massive missiles into, like, these would be strikes that they might not respond to, but given everything we're talking about, Gary, with these historical cycles, and when you read the Israeli plans, which Trump is just die hard supporting unequivocally. My fear would be that you start actually getting into a more domino effect situation with Russia and China through Iran rather than through Ukraine, because Ukraine's kind of just isolated there in a way, but Iran and China and Russia. Iran just joined the BRICS. I think they were officially added as a member. The networks of military parts and the trading between Iran, Russia, and China is great. And I think it's pretty clear there's some there's some lines being drawn. Listen, we don't know what's going to happen, but I think that is, the World War III stuff to me actually supports a Trump victory in a way, because I think,
Yeah,
and
I agree. I agree.
you said it earlier, Alex, but it's basically that's how you manufacture consent domestically. If Kamala wins, it's going to be major anti-war, and it's going to break down. America breaks down.
Well,
Way
yeah,
more
because
than
if it's Kamala, then you're going to have anti-war from both the left and the right, versus if
Yep.
it's Trump, the anti-war is only coming from the left,
Yep.
right?
But
yeah,
So,
but what if it's civil war?
But Trump has campaigned on the fact that when he was president, there was not a lot of war happening. And so Kamala is basically, again, what I'm saying is, we don't have to talk a lot about politics.
That's a lie, in my opinion.
Of course, it's a lie. But again, the whole point is that Trump would be making deals with our adversaries because he's much more closer with our adversaries than Kamala is. And Kamala would basically say, no, we have to go to war with our adversaries. And Trump would say, no, we'll make deals with them so we don't have to go to war with them.
Right. And remember, what SJ is talking about is that Uranus in the USA chart is at its north node where it's crossing the ecliptic plane. So there's a really Uranian signature to the USA chart. And every time Uranus comes around to that, there's this world conflict. We were born out of a global conflict. And every single time Uranus comes back there's a global conflict. One of those, however, was the US Civil War, which was an internal struggle. So there is that possibility that this is an internal struggle and not, and that you can argue like which candidate is more likely to provoke that as well,
Yeah.
And they either one at this point, really. I mean, that actually seems like a more likely scenario, given the polarization. You know what I'm saying?
And I would say this, that the Neptune and Aries combined with Uranus and Gemini, that is the Civil War signature, where you had both of those planets in the signs they were about to be in. I just take that as a foregone conclusion, Gary, that there's a civil war, echo or resonance. Now, what that means, if it's just more age of air, like lawsuits and Oklahoma saying we're going to nullify these laws and constitutionally, I just assume that's gonna be here.
Right. States.
Whether
the other thing is, there's a lot of states that have already signed on for a convention. I think we're only 1 or 2 states shy. Have you thought about that eventuality?
I mean,
Yeah, that's
I
a
haven't looked
nightmare
into the details
scenario,
of it.
honestly.
Yeah. I just
I
assume it's
mean,
coming.
it does represent a kind of a civil war, in a sense that, bringing the Constitution back up would be like a
Yeah,
setting
but
of them.
well, what people don't understand about what's going to happen if they do that is that when you call the convention, then you rip up the whole Constitution to start with, right? Like you start from scratch. It's not like, okay, we're going to change it. Like then everything is up for debate. It's not just like amending it, right? Like that you could change anything you wanted, and it would be like writing it over again from the start, which doesn't seem a particularly wise decision to
It was
me
a narrow
personally.
call the first time around. I mean, if you understand the history of the anti-federalist movement, guys like Patrick Henry, a fellow Virginian of mine, were the reason why we have a Bill of Rights. They were like, dude, we cannot have this Constitution without a Bill of Rights. So I feel you on that for sure. Yeah. But, it's interesting to think about it as internal versus external strife, I think, you know.
Yeah, the internal strife worries me more, honestly, than the external. Like
It
they,
might be more healthy in the end, though, like the internal hashing out of these difficult, differing. If we can manage it without imploding, it might be more healthy in the end to have internal versus external for the world.
Even
Yeah.
someone
Republic of
says in
Texas.
chat,
Yeah.
someone says in chat, the other wild card option is that Trump offers a path to citizenship through military enlistment and service for illegal immigrants.
Well, all of the people that are coming are of that age. That would be like actually really smart thing to do, because guess what? Then they can staff the military with volunteers. And I mean, Dick Cheney last time famously pointed out, hey, we didn't draft these people. These are volunteers, so then they can do whatever they want
Right.
because well, we're not drafting people, I mean, I'm not saying I agree. I'm saying it would be smart strategically. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people that came in are exactly of that age that would be, and I mean, so that's an interesting, a lot of really good comments.
Okay, so I think that's a good a place as any to leave the political discussion. We could obviously go on ad infinitum until we are blue in the face here. It's a great discussion, and I'm thanking all you guys for coming on. But
Yeah.
I do want to at least get one person's chart read on the show. I mean, that is like the point of this show. Ostensibly it is. So I know if you got to go, SJ, you got to go. That's all good. We can handle it. But thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I'm very grateful that you come on the show. I've been a follower of yours for years, and so it's really nice to have you on the show. You can always find him at sjanderson144.com. He does natal readings. He does a great job. I've had a reading from him before. And so, yeah, if you're interested.
Thank you for that, Alex. Great to see you, Gary. Honor to be with you, sir. Wonderful to see you, GBT, again. And, I just send good energy to everybody out there, no matter what happens. I think we're going to need this kind of, siblinghood.
We need you back on Twitter, SJ. We need you back on Twitter.
Yeah, been missing you, dude.
Maybe. I just don't know if I can handle the crisis, of Twitter and the kind of, but, you always find me on YouTube, and so just guys, take care out there, and we'll see that bona fide Saturn, Gary. Wow, you got me, thinking, and I appreciate
wow.
you doing that. And you too. Peace out to everybody. Okay, I am gonna leave now.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
SJ. Thanks so much for coming on.
Okay, thank you for having me. Bye bye. Okay.
All right. We have our first caller of the evening, Brooke. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Pretty good. Pretty good. So while you are, let me get your information plugged into SolarFire here. Can you share your birthday
August 4th, 1996,
and the time
7:51 a.m.
and the location?
Dayton, Ohio. Dayton.
All right. Okay, here we go. Now, let me share the screen again.
Diurnal Leo. Leo's Leo. You identify as a Leo?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I
Okay,
bet.
can we see this chart relatively well with everyone's heads? I think so. We can tell what it says.
Leo rising.
Yeah. All right. This is in whole sign, which I think you guys both use. So, all right, here we go. Okay, so I mean, one of the first things that jumps out to me is this like Saturn is about to station, or has just stationed, rather, just stationed retrograde. So that's gonna make Saturn kind of weak. It's gonna intensify it, but it's a retrograde station, so it's like, I don't know. I think it's in the ninth. Have you had? Did you have like any kind of perhaps like a delay with like, or something involving like school that was out of the ordinary, right? Like maybe you either went to school really early or late. Like there was some kind of timing disruption with your education.
Yeah, I never went to college or anything. But like I work in education. So I think that's pretty
Oh,
interesting.
interesting.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm a paraprofessional. I have a one-on-one kid I work with.
Oh,
Oh,
wow.
okay.
I was a QMHP in North Carolina for many years, so I worked with a lot of paras.
Okay.
I was a para too, actually. Yeah.
Oh wow.
Yeah, that's an interesting signature too, because Sun Saturn is like an authority figure kind of deal, right? So what Alex was pointing out there is like there's this interesting relationship with Saturn, which rules authority figures, and it's in your ninth house of education, but also like foreign cultures and international travel and stuff. Have you lived out of the country ever?
No, I don't like traveling that much at all in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, it gives me anxiety.
You still live in Dayton?
No, I live in Cincinnati.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
So-
kind of signifies with her ninth house ruler in fall in the 12th. So that's why she is a fear. She just doesn't like flying. Is the ruler of the ninth, and you have Saturn in fall as well. So she has both her malefics in fall, which is a very rare combination, and that's where she definitely feels a fear of flying, or she just hates flying, is because Mars is fallen in Cancer, Saturn is fallen in Aries, and she has an applying square between both her malefics. So the rulers of her 6th, 7th, 9th, and 4th are basically in a direct square with each other. So you can look at the topics of these houses and how they're always going to be challenging for you, given the fact that you have your natal chart where you have two of what we consider as malefic planets that give us challenges. They're not jovial planets where it's all just good news.
Yeah, but speaking of jovial, Jupiter is involved in that square, so
yeah.
they're
However, it is not. It is involved in the square, but not by degree. It is not intervening. It is not intervening in the applying square to break the
right.
square. So that is what I was kind of. Yes, it's there, but
It's kind of the final aspect that Mars will make the square to Saturn, but then it'll get the opposition to
yeah.
Jupiter. Yeah.
So it's this is one of those charts that definitely I can see why she has. And so you would want to investigate the topics of the houses ruled by Mars and Saturn and see why you always tend to have challenges with the topics ruled by those houses and where Mars and Saturn are placed in your chart. So the topics that Mars and Saturn rules and where Mars and Saturn are in your chart are all very relevant to you because you have the situation in your chart where you have both malefics in a very tight applying square and they're fallen. So that is immediately one of the first things that jumped to me where I was like, wow, this is quite a challenge. In terms of challenges, you will definitely tend to keep having challenges. You will have challenges that you may seem that you will never be able to overcome in some ways because of the nature of Saturn and squaring Mars. So that's kind of what I wanted to add. We can talk about a lot of other planets in our chart, but this is very, I've seen this in a chart of San Francisco and LA, for example, where San Francisco and LA have Mars in Cancer and Saturn in Aries. And no wonder they have crime and homelessness happening in that city and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
crazy. So
maybe
someone in the oh, go ahead. Sorry, Gary.
maybe she has a question, that she wants the astrologers to talk
Oh
about.
yeah. Before that, I just wanted to highlight a comment here that I thought was interesting. Someone in the comments says Moon is in a decan of Aries, which gives an intelligent person who is fickle in relationships and good at sexual intercourse, an eloquent and handsome person fond of dancing and singing and possessing spouses and wealth, a person who desires travel and has friends and money.
It's a
So
Venus ruled decan is what they're talking about. Venus is the ruler of your moon by decan. So all those are Venusian topics. Not to put you on the spot at all with that.
But yeah, did you have any questions about your chart that you wanted us to look at? Because keep in mind, we are doing just kind of brief overviews. Like this kind of reading that we do on this show is the kind of read that you would get like if you bumped into me at a coffee shop or a bar and we got to talking and I said, okay, I'll look at your chart and just take a glance at it. Yeah, obviously, if you want a full on reading, you should go to one of us privately. But this is fun. So,
Yeah.
do you have any questions that you'd like us to look at?
I was contemplating being a death doula for a while, and I was just kind of wondering if it's something in my chart that I could be good at, or if it could like be a long-term thing.
Yeah. So, I mean, the first thing I would look at anything involving anything medical or anything with institutions is the 12th, 6th axis, right? And you've got Mars and Jupiter here in the 12th and 6th. You also have Neptune here, and Venus is close to this axis. I think it is in, yeah, it, I don't know. You have enough placements, I think, in the 12th and 6th that working in some kind of medical field would not surprise me.
Okay.
I don't know. What do you guys think?
Well, I mean, it kind of goes back to the two malefics being square. I mean, what's the most malefic thing that can happen to a human being? They have to die.
Death. Yeah.
So being part of that process would make sense there. But typically, the eighth house is where you go for death, and the eighth house is Pisces. And Pisces is probably one of the most, when you just think about pure, unconditional love, Pisces, because Pisces is ruled by Jupiter and Venus. And so as I understand it, maybe I don't know that much about it, but that's the role of a death doula, is to be there as a supportive person, holding space for this person as they're transitioning to who knows what. I mean, but so that kind of makes sense. Like just Pisces being there, like you would have this sort of universal compassion for people in that situation, and then the planet that rules that is in the 6th house of health. And again, it's very much a healthcare situation. And Jupiter is actually in its decan. Since somebody brought up decans, Jupiter rules that first decan of Capricorn, and it's the 2 of Pentacles is the tarot card that's associated with that. So I don't know. I'm not getting any hits about whether that would have anything to do with like death doula work in particular. But the fact that Pisces is there and the fact that Jupiter is making a harmonious relationship with that house from the 6th, which is a healthcare house, that would be a definite yes for me. That would
Yeah,
be.
that's a really good eye. That's a really good eye.
Whether you believe in whether you subscribe to the traditional rulership or the modern rulership, both the traditional and the modern rulers are in the 6th house with Jupiter and Neptune.
Right.
So this is an area where whether you subscribe to the modern rulership or the traditional rulerships of which planet rules Pisces, some people say it's Jupiter, some people say it's Neptune. In your chart, both of those planets are in your 6th house. So there is nobody would disagree in the entire field of astrology that there is a connection between your 8th and 6th, and you have the vertex there.
Someone in the comments, Aaron Macro Astrology in the comments mentioned 3rd house, that they think 3rd house comes to mind because doulas are alternative and feminine medicine. I've
That's
never heard of
the 3rd
alternative.
is the 8th from the 8th also. If you think about derived houses,
well,
the 3rd is the 8th from the 8th.
Yes,
So,
that's true.
Yeah.
So Venus rules the 3rd, and like her Venus is pretty strong, right? Just in terms of elongation from the sun, because it's what, like 4, it's like at maximum elongation basically here.
Did we lose her?
So
I don't see her anymore.
Yeah, I think she dropped.
She dropped. Dang.
We can yeah.
Well, I mean, it's nice if they hear what we have to say, but I suppose it's not absolutely necessary.
Yeah.
We'll see if she comes back. But I don't know. I like that Venus. I think that Venus is strong. It's in a good house. It's got good elongation from the sun.
And it's ruled by a very strong Mercury. So it's it's quite good. Mercury is in exaltation and rulership in Virgo. So Venus is, although not in a degree-based aspect.
There she is.
Sorry.
That's okay. Yeah, so go ahead, guys.
Do you have anything, Alex, that shows the almutin of the figure? Do you have a quick calculation for that?
The almutin. I mean,
yeah, you may not be familiar with that.
I know what it means, but I just look at like, so here, I mean, for strongest planets, I don't know, either the sun or the moon, probably, just on first glance. I don't know if I don't really use any of those calculate. I just kind of like look at the chart and see which one seems the
that's
best.
fine. That's fine. I just didn't know if you were familiar with that calculation. Yeah. But
there's loads of them, aren't there? There's loads of different calculations for the almutin, isn't there?
Well, yeah, that's true too. Yeah. But no, it does look good for that particular profession. It does look very possible.
And someone says creative art therapy or other kind of therapist.
Yeah, would be good. Venus in Gemini. Now the other thing is her Mercury in Virgo is quite strong in the 2nd house of money. So when it comes to money, you will always find things to do to make money. It's not going to be a situation where you're always going to be asking people for money all the time. You are self-sufficient because the ruler of the 2nd is in the 2nd. And it is trining that Jupiter in the 6th house. So making money through a healthcare profession is a no-brainer here in this chart because there's an applying trine between Jupiter and Mercury in your chart.
That's cool.
Thank you.
And Mercury also rules your 11th house. And so 11th house has many significations. So, that's where large institutions and whatnot, but also your friend networks, your acquaintances, where this is the situation where you can easily, whether you have a LinkedIn or not, but some of your professional connections or people people you've interacted with, they can also help you get jobs. And you will not have very many challenges in that area. Where if you simply went to your people in the past, people you kind of know but are in certain fields, don't be shy in reaching out to them for getting you an interview at certain organizations, because the ruler of your second and the ruler of your 11th is the same planet.
Okay. Thank you.
And it's well situated in the second house of money and possessions and income and stuff like that. So I like your Mercury. It's quite well dignified. I would say the strongest, planet in the chart.
Yeah.
So that's what I would kind of analyze your chart as.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Someone in the comments just brought something up that I was about to say, is that you're going to have your Saturn return soon. And this is something that I was talking about actually with Kamala's chart, because remember in the political portion of the thing, Kamala has a moon. It's like her moon's like 6 or so degrees after yours, but you have a similar moon placement. And the Saturn conjunct the moon is, often associated with, changes in home, increased responsibilities, increased burdens, changes in career, stuff like that. So I would look for those kind of themes with your Saturn return, especially because you have Saturn and the moon in the same sign. I think that's an even double reason to think that you will get that kind of result with the Saturn return. I don't know, just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Do you have any other questions?
No, I appreciate the experience and I really am grateful for all of you. So thank you so much.
Cool. All right. Well, then we've got the next person already on the line. So, yeah, thanks for coming on, Brooke. I really appreciate it.
All
Thanks,
right,
Brooke.
thank you guys.
You're welcome.
All right, bye.
Okay. Hello, Destiny. What's
Hi,
up, man?
can you hear me?
You don't sound like Destiny.
Hello.
Sorry, that's the bad joke that no one
Oh.
else gets. Just the guy, Steven, whatever his name is, the streamer.
Oh, the political commentary.
Yeah, sorry.
No.
That flopped. All right, what's your chart information? Let's jump straight into it.
I am August 2nd, 1999. Born at 3:24 p.m. in Newark, New Jersey.
All right. Does this seem like the correct chart?
It does, yeah. Another Aries moon.
Yeah, another one. Interesting.
Another diurnal Leo. The Leos are taking the stage here. With Aries moon too. Two in a row, Leos with Aries moon.
Well, I guess it does take some courage and some willingness to show yourself off
That's wild.
in order to get your chart read publicly. So, yeah, I would say that, probably, and that sun is conjunct the nodes as well. That's interesting.
So you were born near an eclipse is what that means.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The Venus is right there on the midheaven, but it's retrograde. However, it's should be in the middle of the retrograde cycle, so not as bad as the stationing. It is.
I think it ended up stationing direct like September 11th of that year.
Yeah. So it's closer to the retrograde station than it is the direct one. Um,
Do you have a Venusian career? Do you work in
Um, so I don't have like an established career. My most recent job, I would say, was Venusian. I worked as like a home organizer. So I
okay.
was employed with a group of like, it was all women, so like 7 women, and we were
Mhm.
with clients in their homes, like apartments, mostly in New York City, so like high net worth clients, and we would. So it's kind of like a luxury service in that it's like a lot
Yeah.
of rich women who can afford it, and we're going and like
Yeah.
arranging all these like expensive luxury type of items. But
Rearranging, right? There's the retrograde. You're rearranging things, right? Right.
exactly.
Yeah.
and you also have Mercury retrograde, and it's changing. It just like retrogressed into a new sign, which is an interesting kind of thing. Now, Mercury retrograde is often, you often see that with like people that are like, have an anti-authority streak or a contrarian streak, right? Like they,
Yeah. Hermes was big time anti-authoritarian, and his, I mean, he challenged his big brother
yeah,
and Papa Zeus and got and like, got himself. He kind of dealt himself into the Olympic pantheon.
exactly. Because like symbolically, I interpret the Mercury retrograde as Mercury turns around and then marches straight back into the sun, right? And so it's like this kind of defiant, like, fuck you. I'm going to do what I want anyway. I don't care if it burns me up.
Yeah. I'd say I definitely do have that, at least like in my heart. I don't think if like people who didn't know me very well would categorize me that way necessarily, but like I very much am. And a lot of it ties into like how I grew up, my family, and the like Mercury in the ninth house on the third ninth axis. A lot of it has to do like with who I am amongst my siblings, and then like it against my parents kind of. Um, but yeah, and the Mercury, yeah, it's 29 degrees right now. I guess like for the past year and a half, have been experiencing like the direct Pluto opposition, which when it started, like it kind of quite literally to the dates, like my life upended. Before I was actually working. My first job out of undergrad was a tech consulting job. My entire undergrad degree, actually, like I was preparing in preparation to go to medical school. I thought that's what I was going to do. Then I graduated. I was like, I'm going to take some time off. And then like continued to lose interest. So I decided to get a job in consulting. And I like, for all intents and purposes, hated it. I hated like the corporate culture, just the formality of it. And I thought a lot of it was just like I was wasting so much time, and it was just like too much pandering, and like I had a really hard time in that job for a number of reasons, and like an issue with my manager that ended up being the reason I left the job. So so that like a little bit of background in terms of like further career, like what I found my interest in have been primarily astrology. And then it's funny that the last user, she talked about wanting to be a death doula, and as of recently I've really been looking into like doulaship and like midwifery as a career. So yeah, those are a few things.
Well, I mean, that's really a couple things that stand out to me. I mean, you have the North Node in the ninth house, whereas the previous person had the South Node there. So you have a little bit different relationship with higher education. You were actually seeking that at one point.
And it's
But
because I have a sorry to interrupt. I have a degree from an Ivy League university is where I went for undergrad, and I have a lot of like kind of like personal contention with that in some way. Like it's like when I at the time I went, I did really well in high school, like for a number of reasons, but like somehow, some way, it all like fell apart in college. It's like as soon as I left home, all of the childhood trauma kind of caught up to me, and then I went from that time forward, like spend like this time like in what I would consider kind of like a mental prison. I have that Mars and Scorpio in the 12th house, and a theme of isolation has like it's one I'm very much living in right now, and has like cropped up at different points in my life where like if I get into a kind of like bad position, I like will completely self-isolate myself. Like I won't see my it's not that I prefer it necessarily. Like when I'm in good spirits, I love to see my friends. I love to like be out. But if not, like I'm totally kind of like attuned to being completely alone and like relying only on myself.
Wow, that's unusual for a daytime Leo.
I have all
Yeah,
this
I mean, she does have that Saturn Mars opposition though. That's
yeah,
pretty harsh energy, right? And
yeah,
they're
yeah.
in dark houses too. So I mean, that could
Mhm.
have been a lot of, especially like in the first like 24 years, like a lot of kind of alienation or
Yeah, yeah. And
like,
the ruler of the ascendant Jupiter is in the sixth house, and sixth house is definitely like kind of, getting lost in the everyday, just kind of like getting lost in routine and so forth like that. So yeah, I can kind of see it. Um, I mean, to get back to the question of dualship, I mean, Mercury retrograde in Cancer in the eighth house would definitely be an indicator of that.
Yeah.
I mean, especially because Mercury, one of the other things that Mercury is ruler was that he was the conductor of souls to the underworld, to the afterlife.
Exactly.
And actually, I mean, Cancer, the previous person had Pisces there, and Cancer, again, a water sign. But in this case, Mercury would actually be a little bit more healthy to have, because you would need some amount of, you know, um, distance from that process. And Mercury is a more mental planet that would give some detachment, maybe. Whereas, something like just the pure Pisces Jupiter energy might get just like overwhelmed by that process. I would trust Mercury to be a little bit more capable of being healthy amount of detachment. Like you won't necessarily take that work home with you. But yeah, I could totally see that potentiality. I mean, it's interesting because both, Mercury rules the career too. Mercury rules the midheaven, and so, there he is in the eighth house. I mean, there's a lot of ways that could play out though. Mercury retrograde in Cancer. I mean, it's interesting, the setup you talked about before was literally going into people's homes, right? And rearranging their, like a luxury, right? So Cancer, the connection with home and Mercury being this, retrograde planet that's sort of going in and redoing the home environment, so that fits. Mercury has a financial aspect, not so much in Cancer, but there definitely Mercury is a financial planet, and it's in the eighth house, which is the financial house. And so,
For like the past year or so, I've dedicated like a lot of time, and more so recently in the past 6 months, to learning trading. Which is like
yep, that's one of the things I was going to say. Yeah.
So yeah, I've been like doing that, but it's like been intensive self-study. So like with that, like Mars ruling my moon, that Cancer is that Mercury is in.
Yeah.
And like also it's primarily the foreign exchange market, which I think like the 12th house deals with foreign and stuff. So I think like I need the structure. If I could right now, I would be working a job, because that is what is best for me. That's like where I can find like some kind of structure in my life. And you noted that like, yeah, that Saturn and Jupiter in my sixth house, and that's ruling my IC. I have medicated, like I'm medicated for ADHD, but like up until I did that diagnosis back in 2019, and that changed my life for a number of reasons. But like I've always been so poor at maintaining routines. And all those things I've mentioned, like trading, dualship, and what else? Astrology. Like those are all kind of like soul entrepreneurial type of ventures. And I think ultimately, like that's where I am, because that's like it's where my passion is, my heart is. I'm too like too much of a people pleaser, too much of like I won't speak up to say something. I can feel extremely strongly about it, but like I'm too good at compartmentalizing to ever necessarily express it to like a superior, or like if I was in that type of position. So like I'm in this in between where I want to move away from like the the comfort that structure could give me, like having a job and all those types of things. But like the only way I can move towards like true entrepreneurship would be like in like having a completely solid foundation for myself, like support myself financially. And like with this Pluto that's been opposing my Mercury for the past year and a half, and then like Saturn and Pisces has literally been like the worst period in my life. And before that, I thought the worst period was before that. Like
it just keeps getting worse.
And it's amazing to me, but like I'm in a better place somewhat, but like no, it's okay. I'll just explain this quickly but like it's like after I graduated college, I was in a really low place. Then getting my job that I hated but like paid really well was like is what boosted me up into this like really good place where I was able to provide for myself and like just be more mobile, see my friends more often, and like it's what I ended up by meeting a friend who lived in New York City. She introduced me to astrology, and like that completely blew my world up. And she became a very important person in my life. And then I lost that job and like was fine with like it being gone, and then was again in this place of like no routine. And in that time, that interim, I wanted to give myself some time, but then like I have like I don't even have when I think what like the idea of routine, even when I think I'm doing well, I'm actually not doing well. It's just like I'm running in circles, like, and then the days turn into weeks, into months, and then looking back trying to see like where all that time went. And it's like I can never just get like a firm grasp on it, and I'm just always like stuck between two desires, and then always putting half my heart into either one, never making actual I'm making progress in a sense, like in this philosophical sense, it feels like I know it's not wasted, but it's like I can never actually get moving. And I'm trying to think in terms of like these transits, like is there, because before all those things, like meeting that job was like, it was completely really to chance. I'm not like in tech. I don't have skills oriented towards that. My degree wasn't, it was in biology. So that was very much, I met the right person at the right time, and I got this opportunity and like was able to take advantage of it. And I can recognize that it's not like, oh, I did, I have this degree, I did so well, I got it. So it's like, maybe I thought somehow like subconsciously, not consciously, that I would get another opportunity, like it would appear to me, but I'm just like moving through sludge. And it's like, it's brought me spiritually a lot. Like it's been really tough, but like I don't know what to do to myself to like get like my life going again.
Yeah, well, Jupiter and Saturn in the sixth house. I mean, the sixth house is the house of servitude. Okay, so it's the job job. In other words, it's like the one where you are not really in a position of power. Like you're like sixth house is below the horizon, right? So it's like a position of not being empowered. And so if you're working a job, so like having those social planets in that house, like it would be easy for you to fall in a rut of a job job and think you're doing good, but really you're just in a position that's like not actually going to get you anywhere long term, except for more, right? And so I think you have the right attitude about like that that entrepreneurship and going on your own would be better for you. But the problem is like this, like you have to be structured in order to do that. You have to be like militantly organized and militantly self-starting. And, if you're not, then, that can be really difficult, As far as being an astrologer, Mercury is the planet of astrologers, traditionally speaking. And, you have Mercury in the eighth house, and the eighth house is associated with the occult. And so, once again, I mean, I would expect that you would be with Mercury in the eighth, that you would be somewhat psychic, or, one of the clairaudient, sentient, whatever.
Also, Pluto's, that Pluto on the ascendant too.
Right. I mean, you would have some kind of intuitive gifts to go, it's being that would kind of complement being the astrologer.
I think astrology is my first love in that sense.
I mean, I think there's a way that you can spin this kind of like this period you're going through now. I mean, it's kind of like building some muscle, I think, because I
Mhm.
mean this Mars Saturn opposition you've got in your chart, which I mentioned before, may have been rough, like especially early on, but as you mature, I think it will help, like especially that once your moon is more prominent and there's a little bit of pressure taken off. But I also have had charts where people have a Saturn malefic opposition in the 12th and 6th. I have a person I know she's a trauma surgery nurse with this placement, right? And so this is someone that can like keep their head together like under pressure, right? And keep it together, and like it doesn't matter how much pressure you put on them, they're not going to break, right?
Mhm.
And so maybe this is like a test to see what's coming next, because
Yeah.
like the last person and Kamala Harris, you also have an Aries moon. Saturn is going to conjunct that soon.
Mhm.
So, I would keep an eye out for the Saturn Aries transit, especially once it actually changes signs. And then that first direct station in Aries, I would keep an eye out on that transit, as, that could be something that could change this work situation, maybe a house
Yeah.
situation as well.
Yeah. One thing that I was thinking about with regard to becoming an astrologer, it's way easier to do that now than it was when I was coming up. And so, but if you struggle with structure, it might be that there's like you don't want to be in a sort of servile position long term, but it might be that as you're starting out as an astrologer, like working for one of these websites or working for some kind of service where you get regular work,
Yeah.
until you build yourself up and build your confidence up, that might be a happy medium where, you're not stuck in this sort of, you know, road to nowhere where you're in this sort of dead end job, because being an astrologer is what you make it. And so, if you use some like situation where yes, it's a job job, but you're learning to become an astrologer, then you might have like the best of both worlds, if that makes any sense. Like you have the structure and the sort of container to keep yourself on track,
Yeah.
but it's not a road to nowhere, because astrology is wide open. It's what you make it. It's not a career that
Yeah.
you're limited like a traditional career.
Yeah.
So that might be something to think about too.
No, that's great. Thank you both so much. And yeah, like especially what you said, and Alex, back to what you said about like your friend who works in the trauma unit. I think definitely like throughout this time, I've built up so much grit and just like endurance and stuff. And like it's always like been a cycle of improving and stuff. That has ultimately been what's made me strong and like built and like recognize the importance of routine. I wanted to address one of the comments because it was funny. I think someone said like Sun Decan is born in a handsome and happy lover with heavy, okay, that one, who and has an older brother.
Heavy thighs, yeah, has an older brother, desires garlands and ornaments, firm and generous person with expansive intellect and expert in sacred traditions. Is any of that true?
No, I'd say definitely like I'm tall, so I'm 5'11", with that Sag rising, and then even like I don't know, I get confused a little bit with the Jupiter and the Venus trine, but I'm definitely very like Sagittarian, and then I think that like it kind of contributes a bit with like the Sun and the North Node conjunction, the ninth house, and like all those themes. And I have two older sisters, and the oldest, she's very much like she's Venus and Pisces, like Moon and Sun and Aries. She's very like fond of possessions, jewelry, nice things, those types of things. That's like a separate point. But the Jupiter and Venus, do you guys have like any comment on that, or like in terms of also just like love and relationships, just like general?
I mean, Jupiter and Venus trine is always good, right? The problem is that like they're both averse to your moon. So that might make that those topics feel a little bit out of reach. Like you have a great appreciation for the like, pleasures and like nice things, and love, but I don't know. It's not like you're not going to have any, but it just might not be as readily accessible. You might have to work for it, look in places you wouldn't ordinarily. Like you might, maybe the person you meet, it's like it's unexpected because also Venus is 6th from the moon. So maybe workplace type romances. I would expect,
Venus in the 10th, like
Yeah.
Virgo Venus.
Yeah, but Mercury is the ruler of the 7th house. So, it kind of depends on what you're looking for too. Like, are you talking about dating or are you talking about like marriage?
Well, it's like I almost have like this complete aversion to dating. Like I see the utility for other people certainly, but it's like I know exactly what I want, and who that is, and like I don't think a lot of like the current like in my generation like what's dominant socially and like politically produces
Right.
as many of those types of people that I want. I'm sure I know I can find them. It's not to say that, but so I don't have, I'm like not showing my face on camera. I actually was like trying to, but I just didn't get around to like looking good enough to whatever. But it's like I don't have any social media platforms. I don't have like any public pictures of myself. Like honestly, in the last 10 or 15 years, I have social media accounts. Like I'm more, like socially in tune somewhat, but like it's never really been my priority ever to maintain like a social media profile. And maybe before it was a lot more of like insecurity, but like as I've grown older and like, grown out of a lot of those like primary insecurities, it's still so that becomes kind of interesting in terms of my problem. Like what I was talking about with like entrepreneurship, a lot of what it has become today obviously is like it always has been and will be is like marketing, how you're able to market yourself. And one thing I'm like extremely poor at, like I don't know and that even contributes to even a job search, like sending out a resume, this idea of networking. And then I bring up again like that 9th house and like having gone to like such a kind of like type of institution where like I know what it like can do for you to have such a involved network of like so many people in so many types of places. But like one of those things, like my regrets in college, like I was never able to take advantage of that because I was so like caught up in my own head. And like even as I grew past that, it still hasn't like it's not something for some reason I'm good at. And like I'll help all my friends with anything they want to do. I will like lay myself in the middle of the road for another person type of thing. But like and I know the skill required, and that's part of it. I think too with all the energy of the retrogrades, like because I want everything I do want to present very well, and like I know what quality presentation is, but then like it takes me so much time, it takes me so much work to do it, and like I just end up being like chopped up in 10 different places, and then like continue to like really scatter myself. And if there's someone waiting, obviously, and like you guys have already given me so much good stuff, so thank you for that.
Yeah, I mean, I would watch, with the, I would watch with the ruler. You're a diurnal chart, so there's a few different rulers of the 7th, and just kind of watch the transits of each of them and figure out like when you meet people that you actually like and that you're attracted to, like what planet is, and then you can get a sense of like the flow, how the flow of life is bringing these people into your awareness. So first ruler would be Mercury. That's the domicile ruler, and the second ruler of air signs in a day chart is Saturn. And so you mentioned like maybe some kind of generational disconnect. So it may be that older people, with Saturn being one of the rulers there. Saturn is in the 6th. So again, that comes back to like the work connection that Alex was talking about. So yeah, I mean, I would encourage, you seem to be pretty knowledgeable about astrology and pretty, like follow what's going on with your 7th house rulers and transits to your 7th house and stuff, and watch what life is showing you, and kind of
also keep an eye out. Oh, sorry to interrupt you, Gary. My bad. I was just going to say also keep an eye out for Venus retrograde periods, because since you're born with a retrograde Venus, that there may be more activity when Venus is retrograde.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another thing to keep out for. But
Thank you.
So we have already run long on this show, and we have one more person to get to. So I thank you so much for calling in. I really appreciate it. We couldn't do the show without people willing to share their charts publicly, and it's not easy. So I really appreciate you doing that.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much to you both.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Have a great weekend.
You too.
All right, we got one more person. It says, what is your name?
You know exactly who it is, motherfucker. It's Daryl Whitehead.
Daryl.
I'm surprised that even your witchy ass little coven of witches, they're gonna go ahead and predict that Trump's gonna win. I bet you're sweating in your fucking boots. Sweating in your fucking boots. Yeah, I bet you're sweating because he's gonna outlaw this shit. You know that.
You think he's gonna outlaw astrology, Trump?
He's gonna outlaw whatever kind of witchcraft you're practicing. That's what he's gonna do. I mean, that's why I voted for him.
You've already voted.
He's got bigger fish to fry, Daryl.
Excuse me.
Don't you think he's got bigger fish to fry than us astrologers?
Y'all are tearing down America. So no, I don't. I don't think it's bigger fish to fry. Who's a bigger fish to fry than the Satanist cult that's behind all this bullshit that y'all are perpetuating online? I mean, I had a son. He's still my son. I don't want to be overly dramatic about it, but the fact of the matter is, it's ever since he started watching your shit online, watching this bullshit, watching you talk about, who's in Uranus, is Gemini in Uranus? I mean, it's just shit it's fucked up shit that it warps children's minds. So,
But I thought that was the trans thing, Daryl. Which one bothers you more, astrologers or the trans people?
Well, speaking of trans people, Alex, you got a different, you look a little different than the last time you were on.
Yeah, I know. It's switching it up.
Yeah, you sort of look like if Annie Lennox fucked Justin Bieber and then they had a child. Yeah, but you're not fooling anybody, brother. Okay, I know you're a chick. You've always been a chick, but then you're gonna go ahead and wear you're gonna wear a suit and a button-down shirt and some Sennheiser headphones, and you're gonna act like, oh, okay, I'm a guy now. It's like no one's fooled, brother. We all know.
Right. I'm actually a girl.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. All right. I mean that
you can't just get a Justin Bieber haircut and then not act like you don't look like a lesbian.
All right, Daryl. Why are you calling in? You know what the show's about. You're not going to let us read your chart this time either, are you?
I was watching your stream because sometimes I watch it just to see what's going on in the satanic underworld of the Democratic Party. And I was surprised that what you were saying was that you thought Trump was going to win. And I said, even your witchcraft, even your, I said to myself, like, even your evil satanic witchcraft deeds, that's telling you that the son of Jesus Christ himself, Donald J. Trump, is going to win. Now, how you feel? I bet you're quaking in your fucking boots. Because all this shit's going to be made illegal in about a year.
I know. Trump is going to bring the hammer down on us. It's going to be terrible.
It's going to be the bang hammer.
And then the bang hammer? Is
the
that
bang hammer.
Right.
Y'all are fucked. You don't know it yet, but Donald J. Trump, God bless his heart, God bless his soul, God bless his presence. He's gonna bring it down on you.
Look, Daryl, enough about Trump. Let's focus on something.
But what if we're Christian?
What about your son? Did he ever give you back the computer that he stole? Your son? Whatever became of that?
Look, Aiden's doing a lot better. He's in community college. He's studying to be a DJ. He's going to be a DJ out in LA, which is fine. As far as me and his mom are concerned, it's fine that he's going to do that. But we just want him studying. We don't want him watching your program. We try to keep all the parental locks on all this shit, on lock. So we restricted the Wi-Fi password. We restricted just about every device he could have in the house. But the problem is these goddamn vapes.
The vapes.
Yeah, well, I think he's watching your stream on his vape.
He's watching the stream on the vape.
Well, you know how vapes started out. So first vape started out They started out just being those blue devices. They were shaped like cigarettes. You know what I'm talking about? The blue devices.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was first just those vapes, and then it was Juuls. And then every single vape got a bigger screen and a bigger screen and a bigger screen. And each one had a bigger and bigger screen until it's about the size of a goddamn iPad. And pretty soon you can text on these damn vapes. So his vape, it's basically him sucking off the corner of an iPad, just getting his nick fix. He's just sucking off the corner of an iPad,
Right.
but then he can read his texts and his emails on it. And I think he's been watching your show on it because we tried everything.
So you think that Aiden has been watching my show on his iPad vape? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah, his iPad. I mean, that's a good word for it as I can think of. Is an iPad vape. Yeah.
All right. Well, I mean, that sounds kind of cool, honestly. I mean, I want an iPad vape.
Well, obviously, me and his mother are deeply upset about it, but the point of the matter is, all this shit's going to be illegal in about 2 months.
Right. Okay, Daryl. Well, look, you've driven away the last of my guests. Even Gary, who was the stalwart staying behind, he's gone now. So thanks, bro.
Both of those guys
fuck?
look like they look like different versions of each other. There was like two bald white guys that were just on the screen, and one had a blue background and one had a green background, but they looked identical. It was weird. I felt like it was the same guy.
All right, Daryl. All right, let's
Trump 2024. Let's go,
okay.
baby. Let's go.
Yeah, all right, we know. Yeah, Trump. Well, I mean, that's who I'm saying is gonna win. So
you almost tempted me with that shit too. I
but
thought
if Trump wins, will you actually come back on and let me read your chart? If I'm right and Trump wins, will you come back on and finally let me read your chart, Daryl?
I'll let you read my chart. If Trump wins, I'll let you read my chart. But I thought I thought God, Satan himself is tempting me because I said, what kind of practice, what kind of witchcraft practitioners could convince, you're obviously liberals. So what kind of witchcraft could convince a liberal that Trump's going to win? And I said, oh boy, maybe I might want to practice this shit. But I said, no, it's Satan tempting me.
Yeah, Satan is tempting you, and Satan is telling me to boot you off right now. So sorry, Daryl. I will see you later. Oh, hey, Gary, you're back. I just booted Daryl off.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
On.
Poor Daryl. He seems like he's got some challenges there.
Yeah. He's really got it out for astrology. I'm not sure why he doesn't like it so much, but he really seems to hate it.
I wanted to ask him how it would cook his noodle if he found out that I'm a Christian astrologer.
Oh, well, he's still here. Let's turn him back on. Daryl?
You're a false prophet. And the Bible, if you read Revelations, the Bible warned us about false prophets.
You know what Jesus said about false prophets, Daryl? Do you know what he said?
Who? The Lord Jesus Christ?
Yes.
Our Savior?
The Lord. Yes.
Yeah, what did he say?
He said, judge them by their fruits.
Okay, look, I don't want to be eating apples and pears all goddamn day and eating fruits that people make.
No, Daryl, what he meant was that if someone is having a good life and helping people and producing
with a pear? With a goddamn Fuji apple?
No, with astrology.
I don't talk about fruits. I don't believe in that shit.
If someone is doing good work, if they're doing good in the world, they're a good person, Daryl. It's very simple. If someone is doing evil things like hurting
you don't
people,
accept Jesus Christ as your Lord and fucking Savior.
I did a long time ago.
You're gonna burn. You got a purple background. That's enough to make me think you're probably satanic as hell. You got a purple. It's like pink in the background. You're a guy, man. What the fuck?
Do what now?
I said you got
Daryl, do you know what
calling
this
you
is?
Gay. I think he's trying to call you gay.
Do you know what that is, Daryl? That's Aurora. That's Aurora Borealis.
I'm not going to say one way or the other.
That's God's creation, Daryl. Aurora Borealis.
Look,
God
man,
made that.
If I'm attracted to an individual, maybe that's what makes him gay. If I'm looking at you and I'm thinking this is a handsome guy with a beard, maybe he is a little attractive to me. You're gay.
Wait, what?
Daryl, I think you're a little confused right now. Are you
I think you're confused,
telling
man.
me
If
you're
if
attracted
you're
to
voting
me?
for Kamala Harris, who is literally a confirmed pedophile, a confirmed Satanist, that you're confused, brother.
I am confused listening to you. That's for sure, brother.
Yeah, I wouldn't be. I'm not surprised.
Daryl,
All
what
right.
do you think? What do you think about the fact that the people who found baby Jesus were astrologers?
No,
What do you
first
think
of all,
about that?
first of all, you get baby Jesus out your fucking mouth. You do not talk shit about baby Jesus.
I'm not. Baby Jesus was found by
Baby Jesus is as
astrologers.
pure as it fucking gets. Do
That's
not talk
right. And he
shit.
was found and honored by astrologers. What do you think about
I can
that?
neither confirm nor deny that. I don't.
It's in the Bible,
To me,
bro.
it was three wise men. I mean, maybe
Yeah,
in your
magi. You know what the word
idea
magi
of a world in
means?
which wise men are astrologers, which they are not. That's satanic as fuck.
Do you know what
I don't believe
magi
in that shit.
means?
Excuse me.
Do you know what the word magi means?
Yeah, it's that baby from The Simpsons.
You lost me, man. I have no idea what
I can't
what
help
the
you, brother.
baby on
I
the
can't help you,
Simpsons
brother.
is.
You're too far gone. You're too far gone in your liberal bullshit world, man. You're fucking way
Look, why
too
are you
far
calling
gone.
us liberals, man? Me and Gary are both calling it for Trump right now. That
Right?
doesn't mean
I
that
mean,
doesn't
come on.
You put
necessarily
on a
mean
suit
we
and
have
comb your
those
hair in a
beliefs.
greasy way.
like,
You're a
come on.
fucking conservative. You're not one of us, brother.
Yeah, I guess I'm just lesbian Annie Lennox.
You're a mixture of Justin Bieber and Annie Lennox, which is what I said earlier. But fuck yeah, you don't listen to guys like me, man. Our voice is being drowned out in this fucking generation.
Yeah. Well, look, we're letting you talk. Right? How can
Exactly.
you
We're
complain that
listening to you,
no
Daryl.
one's hearing you?
Yeah.
Like, look, there's all these people
Yeah.
watching.
We're asking you
They think you're
about what
funny.
you think
I
about
know there's all
stuff.
these fucking crazy people watching. I got hate mail from your fucking fans, dude. Okay, every time I've been on, I get hate mail. Oh, boom. Somebody's
Daryl,
gonna
you
call me
come
a
on
bigot.
here
Oh,
hating,
somebody's
Daryl.
gonna call me transphobic or whatever the fuck it is. I get called all sorts of names from your fans. Okay, but do I call you names? No. Do I insinuate? I've never done that. I don't know why you're laughing. I never do that.
You didn't call anybody
I'm a
names.
perfectly polite individual, and I'm a joy to interact with. And fuck you if you don't think so.
All right. I think that's
There you go.
enough to place
That's
this leave
pretty
it as
much a
any.
wrap.
Yeah. All right. So,
Poor
that
Daryl.
was something, right?
Daryl had a moment there, so talking
I
about
know.
seeing me with a pink background confused him really bad. It seems like.
I know it seems to have stirred up some emotions for him.
Seriously, man.
I mean,
Oh my
he can
goodness.
handle the. He just can't handle the dapperness. And I mean, you got the flannel. That's like the kind of
Right?
lumberjack look.
It's
I mean,
it's the
I mean, I
perfect
can
sort of.
see how Daryl would go for that. Right?
Daryl just never found himself the right bear, I guess, right? Is that the right term?
All right.
Oh my goodness.
Well, thanks, Gary, so much for coming on.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, guys,
I got
seriously,
booted off for a minute there. I'm not sure what happened, but
yeah, I'm not sure what happened either. But seriously, guys, when if you guys need, SJ already left, and GBT, you can find him on Twitter at GBT. He's got a 3-letter username. But seriously, look up Gary. He's a great astrologer. His book is fantastic. And if you are looking for a reading this winter, I'm taking my books off. I'm not doing any readings. So hit Gary up and see what he's got to say about your chart, because I think he's phenomenal, and he had great things to say about the people's charts today. So,
thank you.
Thank you so much for coming on, Gary.
All right, you're welcome. Enjoyed it.
All right, see you guys later.